Okay, welcome everyone to July's full council meeting. Let's just have a look at the emergency evacuation procedure, which should be coming up on the screen. Please take a note of it. Do let me know if you'd like it to be read out. Okay, conduct in the chamber. As Lord Mayor, I have been given the responsibility to run this meeting in an orderly and respectful manner on full council's behalf. It is, of course, absolutely appropriate for members of the public to be able to attend and observe the meeting, and I actively encourage democratic participation. This is a chamber in which a variety of opinions and views about issues will be held and expressed, and rightly so. Can I please just remind everyone here today that I do expect that we behave in a way that is courteous, tolerant and respectful of one another's views, and that we conduct ourselves in a reasonable way. Thank you very much. Can I also ask that mobile phones are on silent, and where possible that we avoid chit-chat so that we can hear what's being said. So we move on to apologies for absence, and we've received apologies from councillors Thomas, Morris, Hiscott, Kent, Khan and Beach. That will be recorded. I don't think we record members who are late. I don't know, maybe? No. Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting. I move the minutes of the meeting of the full council held on the 22nd of May as a correct record. Do I have a seconder? Good. Yeah? Right. Thank you. Agenda item 4, any declarations of interest from councillors? No? Right. Moving on. Lord Mayor's business. On behalf of full council, please can I welcome Councillor Steve Smith to our meeting today. I see already getting in there with questions in the members section. And this is following his recent election as a councillor following the by-election in Westbury-on-Trim and Henley's ward. Welcome to the chamber. Please can I also welcome to their first council meeting Mike Jackson, our new Executive Director, Resources and Head of Paid Service. And thank you. And Quentin Baker, our new Interim Director, Legal and Democratic Services. Just noting that a report on the designation of the monitoring officer is to be considered later in this meeting. On behalf of full council, I would also like to thank Shazia Daya, sat to my side here, who, after many years of dedicated service, is leaving her role here as Director of Legal and Democratic Services to take up the role of Director of Legal at the West of England Combined Authority. I am sure you will join me in wishing her all the very best in her role and thanking her for her service to Bristol City Council. Okay, and just a note from myself, which I hope I'm allowed to have an opinion and say something. It's not political. I'd just like to note and recognise the return from a cultural point of view of the St Paul's Carnival, and also to note we've had another successful Pride event, which saw an unprecedented amount of people take to the streets in the parade, 12,000 people, and also to note that we've also held the inaugural Black Pride event, which actually took place here in City Hall last week. And yes. And also, I'm unable to bring you live dancers today. Sorry, I know that was something you were all looking forward to, if not getting up yourselves. But I would just like to say that there will be a screening of a short dance film in the break, in the conference room, in the conference hall, which is a short film made by young people from Bristol who were taking their Gold Arts Award, and it's called Taking It Back. That will be screened in the break, and everyone, including members of the public, are more than welcome to go and have a look at that. I encourage you to. Right, so let's get into the business of the meeting, public petitions. We have one public petition today, and this is from Catherine Burridge, and it's a petition on the safety in Redland Road near Colston's Primary Elmgrove Annex. Can I ask Catherine to present the petition? I know you also have had a statement coming up, so if we can combine the two, that would be great. Thank you.
362 people have signed the petition, and the campaign is supported by Colston's Primary School, Sustran, Cotton Park Tennis Club, local residents, and many other amenities in the area. On a daily basis, I witness vehicles mounting the curb and driving at speed along the pavement to free up the inevitable bottleneck caused by the sheer volume of two-way traffic trying to use a single-lane stretch of road. Shortly before this photo was taken, the lorry reversed along the pavement towards a group of children walking home from school. This was a terrifying but not uncommon situation. Cyclists frequently resort to riding along the pavement because they consider this stretch of road to be too dangerous to cycle along. There are no pedestrian crossings on this stretch of road. In one place, the road is narrowed to suggest a crossing point. Children standing at this crossing point are invisible to oncoming traffic as they are obscured by parked cars. Similarly, people trying to cross at this point have to step into the road to peer round parked cars to see whether anything is coming. Those of you who are familiar with this bit of road might remember that a car was recently impaled upon one of the metal pencils, thinking it was a gap. They dived into the space, and thank goodness they only hit a metal pencil and not a child. The stressful nature of this section of road leads to highly aggressive and erratic behaviour, with drivers unexpectedly slamming their cars into reverse to clear the jam, or diving onto the pavement because there's nowhere else to go. This situation is set to get worse with the residential development on the Redland High School site and the implementation of a no left turn into Bath buildings, which will direct a greater number of vehicles along this already overburdened section of road. Aside from the immediate dangers posed to pedestrians and cyclists, the sheer volume of traffic must be having a hugely detrimental impact on the air quality around the school. We trust that as our elected representatives, you will acknowledge the problem and find an innovative and effective solution for reducing the significant dangers on this challenging stretch of road before the end of the year. Taking no action is not an acceptable option. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. And we will now have a short response from the local ward councillor, Anthony Negus.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Catherine, and everybody who supported this motion. I know you put a lot of work into this, and it's very justifiable. This is an appalling accident spot. It's part of a long road that goes basically from the Downs all the way down to Cheltenham Road, and this is the 200-metre stretch, which is a very narrow part of that long road. So people just keep going down it, assuming everything's going to be the same. It is very dangerous. It's, as you can see, being used by vehicles completely unsuitable to that road, and yet nothing is being done about this. It's a primary school, it's got other roads, it's got a gym, it's on the main drag into Bristol on the travel to work in the morning, and that is going to be made worse when a left turn into Bath buildings from Cheltenham Road is finally enacted, which was never consulted upon on the people in Cotton, my ward, who are going to have this extra burden placed upon them and this extra danger. I am truly worried about this, and yet although we've been pushing this I've been pushing it for over 4 years, although we've been pushing it for a very long time, suddenly out of the ether pops up a completely different solution to another problem somewhere else, which nobody even saw as being an issue. So this is coming out of some sort of filing cabinet where something like this, which is crucially important, is being ignored. I urge officers, please, to take this into consideration and do the right thing and make it safe for our kids in Cottam. Thank you.
Thank you. I should have started by saying that this is the public forum and that there are 30 minutes allowed for this section, so it should take us to around 20 to 7. So now we've completed public petitions. We now move on to public statements that have been received. As a reminder, or just to let you know, in terms of procedure, a maximum of 1 minute shall be allowed for the presentation of each statement. Please do summarise, and please bear in mind that all statements were sent to councillors in advance of the meeting, and I believe also for information they will be available on the website. So, let's start with the statements, and we go to Viren Patel. Is Viren here?
Yeah, I'm here, thanks.
Oh, there you are.
Sorry, I thought I was standing instead of down there.
Okay, so you have a statement on mental health services. You have just a minute to summarise, please.
Thank you, I will summarise. The Mayor was not at the last Health and Wellbeing Board as the Chair. The Board is abandoning scrutiny for oversight to help local services to be run by the US private health insurance companies, which provide pretty much no mental health services, if you know about how it works. The Mayor does not look at clinical need, but only at Thrive, along with the CCG CEO, Julia Ross. The Mayor's indecisiveness in highlighting local NHS social care injustice in the JSNA and the accounts of the council has led to deaths and breakdown in society and the work environment for professionals, with high turnover of staff and lower productivity and well-being. Martin Jones, who is his fellow culprit, a doctor at the CCG board, is also to blame. They have underplayed need and brought in austerity, helping to cut services. When it comes to clinical need, the CCG point to providers and the providers point back to the CCG. But in fact, no one locally does anything to hold the Secretary of State for Health to account. The Mayor talked of leadership in tackling inequality during...
We're towards the end of the minute now.
Yeah, and so I'll just round up. Zero has been done around tackling inequality for mental health services in Bristol, and it's really bad.
Thank you for your statement. It is noted, and it's just noted as a statement. So now we move on to the next statement, and I know Julie Boston is here, and this is a statement on local taxation and local democracy. Julie, please keep yourself to 1 minute.
Okay. Yes, I urge the Deputy Mayor, Craig Cheney, to support the campaign to remove charity status from fee-paying schools in Bristol. No need to wait for the government's approval. An independent councillor from Daunton Dean has already raised this to generate income to pay for local libraries and teaching assistants. Thanks to The Guardian and Melissa Benn, I know that. So we could get moving straight away. On to local democracy. Any library you go into, you will find that Bristol councillors and Bristol MPs publicise the date and the location of their public surgeries. When I went into Southmead on Saturday, the librarian could find no information about the meeting, this full council meeting that's taking place today. Did you see any publicity, Dawn? No, Dawn didn't either. So really... there are two very, very simple things to do if you are concerned that we are the most divided economically in this country. That's been proved by the Runnymede Trust, so I think...
Okay, thank you, Julie, and for your suggestion. And I can just about read your sweater. Very nice. Right.
Don't take our assets, public spaces, public libraries, public lavatories. You are
Okay.
robbing us. And now you
Right.
try to say that we're a tasting better city when you're
Okay, thank you. Right, we now move on to our next statement, which is by Oliver Fortune, and it's a statement on libraries, footfall and opening hours. Oliver, please can I ask that you keep your words to a minute, please? Thank you.
Okay, I'd just like to start by saying thank you for extending the library review until 2020, which gives us a bit more time to explore future delivery models. At the Cabinet members meeting earlier this month, I was really pleased to hear a councillor say that we need to find ways to increase footfall into our libraries. It was great to hear a councillor say that. I think that one of the main problems for library users in Bristol is the opening hours. They're very erratic, they're not standardised, and people don't know when their local library will be open. You can't just sort of turn up on the off chance and visit. In London, Greater London, there's a library, Camberwell Library, which is open every day, Monday to Friday, 9 till 8. It's open at the weekends as well, 7 days a week. So people there know where they stand. They can just pop in on the off chance. Like I said before, I do believe that the inconsistent opening hours actually deter people from using libraries. And I think we should put this to the test by having a 3-month trial at Central Library, where we have standardised opening hours, reopen it on a Wednesday, and then compare the footfall with the opening hours now and the extended hours and see whether it makes a difference to footfall.
Okay, thank you, Oliver. Thank you for your contribution, and also for your, I've noticed how you're trying to publicise for council to get more people here, so thank you for that as well. So we're moving on to the next statement now, which is a statement by Eileen Means. Eileen, are you here? Great. And this is a statement about Bristol for Europe, and please keep it to a minute.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, members of council. I am pleading with you to debate this resolution. Important as the preceding one is the golden motion on mental health, and I fully acknowledge the importance of that. I'm asking you to at least debate this resolution, because we at Bristol for Europe will be watching and we'll be looking at what is happening. You know, given the mess that has happened over the past few months, and certainly the past few days, this will be a total mess. It will be a mess for Bristol. Airbus are moving out. They will move out. And when they go, BAE and Rolls-Royce and all of the local independent businesses and all of the jobs that rely on them will go with it. Bristol will change from being a proud, independent city that gives to the Treasury to being a begging city. It's nearly there now, because I agree with Julie in many of her views as well. And I must emphasise, although you know me as a Labour member, I am speaking on behalf of Bristol for Europe, whose members come from across all political parties. Every party is represented in Bristol for Europe. We have almost 8,000 members already, and they are active. And they went to the rally a fortnight ago, and we sold out of our coach tickets and had a waiting list. They are across all of the city, and they acknowledge that the important thing for this city, if we are to have any wealth, to invest in services, is we must remain in Europe. So please, I'm only asking, Lord Mayor, you debate this motion. Important as the preceding resolution is, please save some time, don't talk it out, and Bristol for Europe totally supports this resolution.
Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our final statement now is from Max Langer. Are you here, Max? Okay, hello. And you have a statement on Bristol and Brexit. Please, can you keep it to a minute? Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I welcome the motion from Councillor Clough to debate our exit from the European Union. As a city, we should have a frank discussion about how we can protect Bristol and its people should Brexit come to pass. Also, I implore you to use your soft power that we can fight to give the people the final say on the Brexit deal. The 2016 referendum was criminally short of any picture of what Brexit would actually look like. At elections, you all run on manifestos, clear plans of what you hope to do should you win. Why should we settle for less when it comes to sides of a referendum? Don't sell off my generation's future. If you believe that Brexit, whatever its form, will damage the UK, then fight it. Don't settle for a watered-down version. I strongly urge that you vote for the second motion up for debate today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Max. Very concise and within time. So that concludes the statements received from members of the public. Council is asked to receive and note these statements, which I also refer to the Mayor for his information and consideration. So now we move on to public questions, and we will try to get through as many as we can in the about 15-20 minutes that we have left for this section. The questions have been circulated and will be displayed on the screen, so there is no need for questioners to read out their questions. The Mayor or relevant Cabinet member will reply verbally to the questions, and each questioner will be allowed to ask a supplementary question if they wish to. There are a number of people who have asked questions but will be not attending today, so we will not read those out. They will receive a written answer. So we now go to question 5, which is back to Oliver Fortune, and it's a question about Central Library directed to the Mayor. So we'll have the response and then a supplementary. So if we go to the Mayor for your response.
So, my first response is, I think it's a bit of a jump to suggest that increasing access automatically means increasing usage. I think there are a number of factors that would need to come into play to increase usage. But as I said many times this evening, we're going to be working with library users, communities and partners to design the future of Bristol libraries. And in terms of the Central Ward Library, the community around that library should come and be part of that process.
Do you have a supplementary?
Yeah. Will you review the opening hours at Central Library to see if it makes a difference to footfall?
It's going to be as I said, come forward with the groups using that library to be part of that process. We're not going to make a decision around it in an abstract. It has to be part of the overall process.
Right, okay, and staying with you, Oliver, for the next question, again directed to the Mayor. It's a question on community-led toilet services.
So, I'll be frank, Oliver, I didn't quite understand the question. You seem to, can you just break it down for me? You were suggesting that there's some combination between libraries and community toilets, but libraries not being accessible?
As we all know in Bristol, the public toilets have all been closed, and the reason cited is the lack of money to keep them going. If it is a case that we don't have enough money to run toilets, why didn't we explore a community-led toilet service where members of the community would keep them clean for the community to keep using? And also we could have considered a system where people maybe pay money to use the toilet. That wasn't, I don't think that was explored either. So I feel that the real reason for the closure of the toilets was so that they can be sold to private property developers. I think it's asset stripping, that is what I think. And if that is not the case, can you explain why other options weren't explored that would have kept them available to the public to use?
We looked at all options of making sure toilet provision was available to people in the city, and we do. That's why we have asked all of our councillors to work with us to identify businesses such as restaurants and bars who would be willing to make their toilets available to the public.
Yeah, I mean that. I think the
that's true.
The provision that you have the businesses that have kindly allowed the public to use their facilities, I think that is helpful. However, in the I was down in the Bear Pit last week talking to people. A lot of those people that use the Bear Pit recreation, they're not allowed into the sort of posh shops and restaurants that have opened their doors to the public. They're denied entry. That group of people is growing. Pensioners, that group is also growing. How are you meeting their needs by closing public toilets?
Well, toilets are one thing we provide in the city, as I said earlier on. None of the items that we tackle in Bristol happen in isolation. We arrange, people's needs cross adult social care, children's. As I said, that's really important because that's what comes into the challenge of leadership, making decisions. But we've gone for a community-based toilet scheme, which we've asked businesses and so forth to come up and. Along with our public building, toilets have been opened up to people to use, and we're recruiting more toilets all the time.
Right, we're moving on to the next question now, and it's directed to the Mayor again. It's following on from the petition and statement that we heard earlier. So we're going back to Catherine Burridge, who has a question on road safety near schools.
I think I've seen this. Where's Catherine?
Catherine, are you still here?
Okay, so I've seen the video now. I mean, my initial response was if you could give me information about where you think we're not working with schools and parents to take measures to protect our children, then we'll take action accordingly. But I haven't seen a video. I'll get some sense of that, and let's have a look at it outside this meeting with our councillors and our transport team.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right, question 8 again to the Mayor, and it's from Sarah Tolberg. Sarah, are you here? Great. Residents parking scheme in Bishopston and St Andrews. If we have the response, and then you can have a supplementary if you wish.
Yeah, so thanks for your question. I mean, I talked to the Cabinet Lead, Vari, just about this earlier on, just to check, and she is aware of all the work that's gone on, as are the local councillors. And you can talk to Vari in the break or outside of this, but the current review is due to finish in September, and they'll be able to pick up on the next stages of propositions that are coming forward, communities thereafter. But they do need to look at, there are some other questions that need to ask about the geographical area that needs to be covered and the boundaries, and anticipate some of the knock-on effects as well that we've already seen happening. But we're more than happy to look once this current review is finished in September.
Okay, so my supplementary question, I suppose, would be the review that's finishing in September is which review?
It's the current review of RPS. Vari, did you want to speak to this one as well?
Yeah, I suppose just to clarify, yeah, so we've just done a review of the existing RPCs, and that's taken up obviously time in terms of the traffic regulation orders. That'll finish in September, and so from that point we'll be then looking at, you know, what's the next stage in terms of communities that have done the consultation and have clearly shown on the thermometer scale support for RPCs, how we go forward with that. So.
Okay, and so my other supplementary question to Vari, I guess, would be how many other communities are coming to you requesting this consultation right now, and are we top of that list?
So we have 3 at the moment, and we'll obviously have to measure against various different criteria, which we'll share with everybody in September, so there's a very clear, transparent process as to how we approach this in the next stages.
Thank you.
Great, so the final question, again to the Mayor, is from Alderman Brian Price. Alderman Price. Oh, right, sorry. Okay, so it's on, sorry, Alderman, we have to go back a minute. So it's on the same topic that we just had, but from Cecilia Farron. Are you here? Yep. Cecilia, would you like to respond, Marvin, or do you need...
It's just following, well, just to say this is about resources being made available, as I understand, and we will make resources available to support councillors requesting the introduction of new RPSs from September, when this, as just as explained by Vari, when this current process finishes. So in the meantime, please continue conversations with your councillors and get those worked up. Any proposals we want that come forward, we really want them to be owned and driven by local councillors to make sure they genuinely are local solutions, not coming out of this building.
Cecilia, do you have a supplementary question you'd like to ask?
Yes, well, so can the traffic officers be put to work in our area to look at the, as from September, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, we're saying when this current process finishes, yeah, people will then start looking at the proposals that have come forward. A number of them be considered already because people are thinking about this challenge all the time, but work in earnest will start from September.
Okay, and that how long would that process be?
Vari, how long will we take to work through that process on the next stage, do you think?
So the next capital budget is obviously set in February next year. So we'd be looking at from September, entering into those conversations, looking at identifying what the problems actually are. So we've already started some of the conversations with other communities in Redland Ward, for instance, looking at the sort of problems and solutions, and then working up what the next stages would be for that next round.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's okay. Thanks.
Okay. My apologies, Alderman Price. We'll now have the response from the Mayor, and then you can follow up with a supplementary if you wish. The question was on corporate parenting strategy.
So first of all, just to clarify, Councillor Helen Godwin, the cabinet lead, is actually has responsibility, and I don't know, and we can check if scrutiny asked her to appear yet. They're perfectly at liberty to do so. The corporate parenting panel is what scrutinises and evaluates and holds these boards to account, rather than the committee. Although of course scrutiny can look at anything it wants to look at. And just to a point of clarity on the thematic boards that we have, such as the Health and Wellbeing Board, Learning Partnership. These are there because if we want to make any meaningful change in Bristol, we can't do it with any particular sector or organisation working alone. So those boards are there to draw the city together across local government, health service, education, community sector organisations, to make sure that we increase the likelihood of us being successful.
Does that mean that scrutiny cannot scrutinise these boards? Well, I didn't have a card. Somebody said I had to put a card in. Sorry. Are you saying that it's down to the corporate parenting panel to deal with this, not the scrutiny?
Well, that's obviously a key part of not just the way the council works, but the way our system works as a country. But scrutiny is perfectly free to invite anyone to come, and I'm sure that if someone reached out to one of the thematic boards, bearing in mind that some of the people on these boards do not work for the city council, they work in the health service, in the private sector, in our schools. So that question of accountability is obviously one that's qualified. But I'm sure if anyone was invited from any of those boards, they'd be more than willing to come and have that conversation with the council, because they want to engage in constructive conversations to take on the city's challenges and take its opportunities.
Well, thank you. I was trying to rely on the Constitution, Part 3.2A3, and ask, are the boards, bodies, the council is authorised to scrutinise, because that's what it says. So possibly not authorised to scrutinise.
I mean, in terms of the legal rigor around that, I'd have to... Well, okay, so I've just talked to Shazia. We'll get you a kind of a legal response, but what I would say is, you know, we've, around a whole number of issues in Bristol, what we've done is we've gone to key organisations in the city and we've said, can we come together to take on the city's challenges? And I just play it out as a bit of emotional intelligence. And that's not a negative statement, I'm just saying, thinking about how people work. I think some people might recoil if they don't understand the nature of the relationship with scrutiny coming from organisations that are not accountable to this chamber of councillors. So we have to walk that line quite carefully. We can't solve the city's challenges unless people come together. But in coming together, some of them would recoil at the potential of being cross-examined by some members in the chamber, I would imagine. We have to be real about that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that concludes the questions received from members of the public. Written replies will be sent to all those who submitted questions, and I also believe that the questions and answers will be on the website. We do not have, well, going to agenda item 7, we do not have any petitions notified by councillors today, so we will now take a short break of 20 minutes. Everyone is invited to come and watch the dance film if they wish, which is just to the room through here. You can go around and come through. You're more than welcome. We will start screening that in 5 Okay, I think most of us are back now from that short break. And we move on to agenda item 8, which is the Mayor of Bristol's annual statement to full council and then the responses from political group leaders. The council procedure rules provide for the elected mayor to deliver a statement to members at the annual council meeting, essentially outlining his key aims for the year ahead. This year's annual meeting fell during the pre-election period associated with the recent by-election. Hence, this item was deferred to today's meeting. I'm going to firstly ask Bristol's Mayor, Marvin Rees, to deliver his statement.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. So, 2 years in, and I'm feeling very confident that we're on a good delivery curve with the city. We have a strong management leadership in place and a council that's leaner, lower cost and focused on delivery. And I'd very much like to thank all the council employees for their hard work, who do so much for the citizens of Bristol, even when they haven't had the leadership in the past they deserved. And I'd also like to particularly thank Shazia for her help and support. Monitoring officer is a key role, and I wish her well in her new role. So thank you, Shazia. And I hope you enjoy and are enjoying your very last full council meeting. I'm absolutely confident that you'll miss them. Alongside the management, we've been served by a strong and dedicated cabinet with genuine expertise and commitment to deliver. And when I say that, I refer to everyone who's served in the cabinet over my 2 years. Turning the council around has been a much bigger job than expected. There's been a history of failure that you will recognise, with a lack of focus and inability to deliver for the city, and a failure of recent administrations to make the council responsive to political leadership. When I talk to government, I hear the same story over and over again of how Bristol hadn't been outwardly focused for too many years. I even learnt that the Department for International Trade didn't have Bristol on its register of projects for investment for years. Not surprising when we inherited a total absence of a pipeline of infrastructure projects. But all that mood music is changing. When I talk to government and business today, I hear over and again that we are now seen as a positive city, better placed to attract the inward investment we need to deliver. We had a collection of investors in the city just recently, and now we have lots of interest across the UK and the world. Only yesterday I received a text from the chair of a major government agency asking if he could come to Bristol to ensure alignment to our delivery plans. Let's look at some of the key areas. Housing is a key focus for this administration. We're delivering on our promise by 2020 to build 2,000 homes a year, at least 800 affordable. We are reversing the decline from the previous 2 administrations, letting out more than 90 older council properties that had been previously agreed for auction, and reduced the number of empty council homes by 2050. We have changed council structures to deliver, creating a housing delivery team with a pipeline that means by 2020 there will already have been over 3,000 homes completed and over 1,000 of those affordable. This is a substantial build of council homes for the first time in 30 years, with 56 new council homes completed in the last year and a plan to complete 80 more over the next year. We're building a further 1,000 homes in working class communities. We've secured £7 million to unlock the Lockleys development project of 800 new homes with more than a quarter affordable. We've secured over £3 million to develop the Onside and Glencoyne Square regeneration area with the Southmead Development Trust. The Hartcliffe campus site has outline plans submitted, and the Hengrove Park plans have been prepared for delivery, while we have also agreed land releases with Ambition Lawrence Weston. It's easy to talk about house building in the abstract as units and numbers rather than see the real picture. Families getting homes and being able to plan for the future. On top of that, we are focused on building a re-energised city centre for the future. We will expand the city centre east to Temple Quarter and west to the Western Harbour. By building several thousand homes in these 2 great and long-term underused areas, we will bring people and families back to the city centre. More people living in our city centre means more life, culture, footfall and spending power to sustain shops and business. City partners are keen to work with us to achieve these aims, and with them we will host a housing festival to look at new and innovative ways of providing housing over the coming years. By revising the local plan, we will build higher and with greater density, delivering an exciting skyline that reflects a bold and ambitious city. We will increase incentives for affordable homes in the city centre. Ooh. Just want to...
Okay. Just pause for a few minutes. Okay, we will have a look at that in the next break. Are you okay, Councillor? Okay. No, that's not at all. Okay, Marvin, if you'd like to continue.
Okay, thank you. So we will increase incentives for affordable homes in the city central areas, and we have supported the launch of a £57 million fund for housing associations to buy land and properties from the private sector. When we announced 2,000 homes a year by 2020, we knew it was a challenge, but we were delivering on that pledge and will exceed that target and any targets in the Joint Spatial Plan. This Labour administration and this Labour group is building the homes people need and want. And we're tackling homelessness, another growing consequence of the shocking austerity programme imposed on the country and on Bristol by the coalition government of the Tories and their Lib Dem supporters. Austerity has eroded the support services and increased the pressure, but despite these challenges, we are working as a city to respond. Bristol City Council and key partners successfully prevented 4,486 households from becoming homeless last year. We're making people aware of the services available before they reach crisis point, working to address rent arrears and supporting those on the verge of homelessness with the right interventions and working with agencies to mitigate the impact of universal credit. On top of all that, we are focused on building a re-energised city centre. We're taking people off the streets and out of encampments through hostels and emergency accommodation and then into homes. We will be the first city to open a new 24-hour homeless shelter this winter, providing new accommodation in addition to a multi-agency drop-in facility, food provision and activities. We have a responsibility to support the city economy. The UK retail crisis is affecting many cities. Provided we behave like a major city, shaking off the village attitude that often prevails in our political environment, we can face that challenge. Bristol has 46 high streets that offer retail, but if we harness our growth and shape our own development with our eyes open, our city is big enough and strong enough to support both a vibrant city centre and out-of-town centres. This includes supporting diversity in our economy, providing a wide range of jobs, meaningful work experience and pathways to employment. Our international strategy in growing our profile abroad is crucial for trade and inward investment, and Bristol is increasingly growing as a global brand. We all know transport remains a key challenge. Many people lobby for their vested interest and can't escape the inevitability of their prejudices predetermining their proposed solutions. People movement is crucial to our city economy, our well-being, culture, to the future of jobs and education. Transport needs to pull our city together, not be used as a political weapon to drive us apart. We are focused on outcomes, connecting people to jobs and opportunity. The Congestion Task Group has been crucial to that, and I thank those councillors involved, including the Leader of the Opposition. It has delivered some quick wins, and we will now continue that progress with a transport board that will bring together the expertise of city partners with the knowledge of our own transport team to face this key challenge. We are in an exciting discussion with First Bus about the next phase of growing bus use. We have had the fastest global bus use growth of bus use, now accounting for 11% of journeys to work. Smart cards, biofuel buses, park and rides, and millions invested in public transport has been delivered. And Metro Bus, a project badly managed by the former administration, is being delivered. We secured funding to provide free bus vouchers and loan bikes for people not in education, employment or training to help them get to interviews, training and work placement opportunities. We're working with local primary and secondary schools to encourage more pupils to walk to school, are providing match funding for businesses to help them invest in sustainable travel facilities and supported cycling initiatives across the city. We've secured funding to support taxi drivers transition away from diesel engines. However, the key challenge remains making a systematic change to the way people travel in, to and around Bristol. I do not support the flawed belief that modal shift will occur simply by making it harder to travel around the city, or that car drivers are the enemy. And the planned consultation on the Bristol Transport Plan will shape a new policy that changes that. We will not achieve modal shift or accelerate a move away from private cars without an affordable, sustainable alternative. And the mass transit system remains a key ambition for me and my team. We will announce more progress on that shortly. Enabling our city's young people to get off to the best start in life and raising aspirations has always been a focus for me, and we now have an urgent need to increase school places. Over 10,000 additional places have been created in Bristol by expanding existing secondary schools and building new ones. We've allocated £25 million for a new 1,200 place secondary school in Lockleys, opening in September 2019. We also know that we need new school places in South Bristol and East Central Bristol. We've secured land for the largest secondary school in Bristol, Oasis Academy Temple Quarter, which will have a capacity for 1,600 students. We have secured £1.7 million to permanently expand Bristol Brunel Academy for 80 more places. Work is underway at Cottam and St Bede schools to provide more places immediately, and we have expanded Whitehall Primary School's capacity by over a third. We are making Bristol a city in which people of all ages are supported to flourish by maintaining our commitment to early intervention. Not only have we kept all of our 22 children's centres open, but we're investing £1.8 million in transforming children's services to reflect the needs of communities. From this spring, all care leavers under the age of 25 in Bristol are exempt from council tax, and we're developing a social impact bond that will enable us to work with care leavers. We have secured £1.7 million to focus on young people who need the most support and modernised our corporate parenting strategy, confirming our commitment to delivering better outcomes for children in care. We will soon launch the Bristol Children's Charter as a collective statement of our aspirations for the city's children. As part of our commitment to Bristol as an age-friendly city, we applied to the World Health Organization to become part of a global network of cities, taking measures to improve the lives of anyone over 50. And next year, we are hosting the European Cities Network for best services and outcomes for BME elders, those who are most likely to experience social isolation in their older years. And we're committed to inclusively growing our already strong cultural offer. We have saved the venue that will soon no longer be known as Colston Hall for the future, leveraging support from the Arts Council and city partners. Our cultural investment programme requires every arts organisation in the city to demonstrate inclusivity and diversity if they want to secure council funding. By working collaboratively with our media sector, the second largest media sector outside London, Bristol has been shortlisted to be Channel 4's new national headquarters. This would bring a huge boost to local opportunities for young creatives and provide a catalyst for creating meaningful talent pipelines. It has been a huge achievement to get shortlisted, and we continue to work for Channel 4 to come to Bristol. And regardless of their decision, bringing together the media sector will in and of itself improve and provide future opportunities for our city. We continue to work with city partners to put early intervention in health at the top of our priorities. The Cascade and Thrive programmes have been a successful part of that work. Staying on health for a moment, my cabinet member Kai Dudd was absolutely right to say this is the most pro-sport administration the city has seen in decades. We have supported Gloucestershire County Cricket Club to keep international cricket, going with them to present their case at the ECB. We've worked hard to protect our city's football and rugby pitches and continue to invest in built sports facilities, increasing the number of people taking part in physical activity. On the back of the City of Sport success, we launched Bristol Active City to connect people from across the city with activities and sporting events for people of all abilities. Through strong negotiation, we were able to bring the Cycling Grand Prix back to the city at no cost to the council, and we will continue to bring major events to the city. Some people talk about the environment and use it as a platform to display their sense of moral superiority. We're delivering on the environment, and as a result of strong financial management, we will double the number of trees in Bristol by 2050 through the Talking Trees programme, combating air pollution, improving our urban environment for the long term. We've launched Elite Perspectives that offers £1 billion of investment, and a £1 billion investment package that will transform the way the city generates, stores, distributes and uses energy. Our financial competence and credibility is key to our ability to attract that investment. And of course, by the same strong financial management, we've taken the pressure off libraries, opening up the opportunity for communities to work with us to find long-term sustainable futures for all of them. With strong community engagement, libraries can become community hubs at the centre of citizen activity, be an integral part of our community assets, and be a long-term success. And then we have a strategic piece of land in Temple Quarter that holds a key element of the future of the city. Let me now lay out for you the parameters of that decision I will make. I've said repeatedly, the questions must be asked in the right sequence. Firstly, can we afford to build the arena on Temple Island? Now, those who supported the arena, building the arena 6 months ago, or even earlier, wanted the city to borrow almost £200 million. One of those was the former mayor who claimed he wished he'd signed the agreement. Well, there's a reason he didn't sign it, and it wasn't because he forgot. It was because borrowing £200 million for a vanity project was a step too far. By holding our nerve, that project is now deliverable for more than £50 million less. A lesson for those sat here who don't take the public's money seriously. Secondly, what is the best use of Temple Island? Now, we've brought down the cost. We can make a genuine decision for the first time. The sequencing of the questions is crucial because the location of the arena is only important if we believe the city is better served by doing something else on Temple Island. In that case, a discussion on location happens within a positive context. And I have to consider the value for money reports that say that over 25 years, building the arena on Temple Island brings around £375 million of GVA and 650 jobs, while a mixed-use development, including a conference centre, hotel, office space and residential, brings a GVA of 900 million and over 2,000 jobs. It's a big decision and a big statement and a big impact on the city to simply walk away from that difference without considering it. I also know the mixed-use site has interested developers, has financial backing, support from national organisations, and is deliverable at pace. I must also look at the impact on the city centre from increased traffic and congestion. We know that using any average across existing comparable arena locations, 3,500 cars will come into the city centre for every sellout event. That's 3,500 cars driving into and around the city centre and neighbouring wards looking to park. On events where teenagers are the target audience, this number will go up, as experience shows us that parents mostly choose to ferry younger people to and from the event for security. And all without a car park in the original flawed plan. I'll also consider the size and usage of the arena. Many existing venues are already looking to upsize their arena, as the 10,000 seats allocated in the potential Bristol arena is not enough to attract the high calibre events we want. I need to be sure we're building an arena that will bring the expected attractions to Bristol that citizens want to see, not just deliver a profit for the operator who's determined to leverage this decision for their own benefit. And finally, I will ensure you that when I make this decision, it will be without emotion. It will be determined by facts, facts that make sure I make the right decision for Bristol and for the next 50 years. In conclusion tonight, I want to renew an offer I have made several times before. If you came into politics to make a difference to people's lives and you want to get stuff done, put down your party political games and come and work with me. Tell me what you want to achieve for the city, bring some solutions to the table, and I'm all ears. If you want to play the headline-chasing game and continue to talk Bristol down, then I'll leave you to it. And I'll finish by saying this. I made pledges to the city, and I'll deliver on them. This administration has brought financial credibility to the city. We take Bristol's money seriously, spend it wisely, and by being responsible, we can and will deliver on our promises to Bristol. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. I now ask Councillor Hickman to respond as leader of the Labour Group, and you have up to 10 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Marvin, for an annual statement so full of optimism, so unapologetic in its ambition for Bristol and its people. Built on the strong foundation of Labour values, guiding policies that will see everybody share in this city's success. Yours is an administration that listens to, delivers for, and backs Bristolians. I have represented Lawrence Hill for 7 years, and since your last address, major city projects either in or adjacent to our ward have moved forward. Plans to invest £300 million in the new university campus, millions secured to support master planning work for the refurbishment of Bristol Temple Meads, leveraging more Network Rail funding to increase capacity, an ambitious housing infrastructure fund bid which would unlock around 4,000 new homes nearby, and on the doorstep of the Dings, and too often with more hot air involved than the balloon fiesta, is Temple Island. The arena is a complex project. It's far from a binary decision. I'm glad that you have addressed this topic today. There can be no doubt that you are committed to delivering an arena which the city needs, the council can afford, and which Bristolians can be proud of. Our ward is amongst the most deprived areas in Bristol and in the country. An alternative site use might provide 3 times as many jobs for Bristolians, but this potential has not generated the coverage or column inches it deserves. Local people also already face some of the worst air pollution in Bristol. The prospect of 3,000 or 4,000 extra cars travelling to and idling near a venue 3 or 4 nights a week has to be factored in. These are key questions of social and environmental justice, and ones which I'm not convinced the current transport plans account for. That said, I completely back our city centre and see the attraction of building an arena on Temple Island. But the numbers really do have to stack up. Close to £200 million was clearly untenable. Questions also remain over capacity, given the world's biggest artist, Beyoncé, has not played UK venues as small as the proposed Temple Island Arena for almost a decade. Terminating the first agreement was a brave and necessary move. Even Gary Hopkins said so. From Beyoncé to Gary Hopkins in 2 sentences, imagine. Through holding your nerve since then, Marvin, the potential developer and operator have presented improved terms, even offering to take on all of the risk. This would save Bristol taxpayers tens of millions of pounds. So I say this, keep holding your nerve to get the very best deal for Bristol. Now, a lot has happened since your last annual statement. All the while, historic cuts to local government have continued. One council has fallen off the cliff. Others aren't far behind, thanks to the austerity started by the Tories and Lib Dems, while Labour continues to fight for more money and more powers for Bristol. Even more has changed since 2016. Bundred exposed the council in chaos. Crucially, Labour has restored competence. As a report from Nottinghamshire Council says, in local government, there is no substitute for doing boring really well. We have, and as a result of this financial rigour, we have invested in the city, which we are all proud to call home. We have cut backroom costs to protect frontline public services. Almost £1 million a year has been cut out of the City Hall senior management, something with not one member opposite supported in February. Because of diligence on this side of the chamber, every single library and every single children's centre has been safeguarded by Labour, despite Tory austerity. Politics is about priorities. The last year has shown how important strong Labour leadership is to this council and to our city. The Tory poor tax amendment, which would have hit 2,500 of the poorest people in Lawrence Hill, along with over 20,000 more across the city, including 6,000 people in the wards they claim to represent. The Lib Dems have their heads in the cloud on finance and their heads in the sand, still on the role their MPs played in the coalition. And after we agreed £1 million of amendments for the Green Party, they had the audacity to vote against their own amendments, against this Labour administration's investment in renewable energy, and against our measures to tackle climate change. We reached across the aisle on the budget, but too often some members still seem focused on biting their fingers rather than working hand in hand for the benefit of Bristol. On top of the ever-increasing list of manifesto commitments which Labour have delivered, our administration have transformed social care and invested more than £1 million to increase the wages of care workers, become the first council in the country to ban the box, once again demonstrating our commitment to build a Bristol where everyone has a chance to share in the city's success, kick-started Bristol's biggest council house building project in a generation, worked hard to be on track to beat ambitious targets of 2,000 new homes, including 800 affordable being built in the city by 2020, introduced a council tax exemption for care leavers and remain the only core city to retain a full council tax reduction scheme while leveraging the full charge on second homes. Whilst others flounder, the green shoots of municipal socialism described by Jeremy Corbyn are flourishing here in Bristol. While I am proud of Marvin and the Cabinet, I am also really proud of our comrades in this Labour group who sit with us on these suitably red benches. In this centenary year of some women winning the right to vote, I want to shine the spotlight on Labour's women councillors. While Bristol known around the world for Ardnam and Attenborough, balloons and Banksy, we are also taking huge steps to broaden access to our cultural scene. This sector's deserved reputation received a boost this year when, thanks to the hard work of Estella, in partnership with local universities and others, Bristol was awarded UNESCO City of Film status. This is a feather in our city's cap as the Mayor and the City continue to campaign for Channel 4 to be relocated here. It's a huge achievement for Bristol to have been shortlisted and testament to the work of so many. Estella has also been working closely with Joe on the future of our city's libraries. Labour's financial competence has ensured each and every one of them stays open. Honestly, Bristol needs to pull together all sectors of communities, all parties, to think about the library service should be like in the 21st century. Modernised, transformed, digital, fit for purpose, and true hubs for the whole community. The imagination of two former branch librarians on these benches will, I'm sure, continue to be a credit for the city. Harriet's work with officers, generous businesses and community groups, and Asha has helped to see some 60 venues sign up to the Council's new community toilet scheme. These are on top of more than 20 accessible loos in Greater Bedminster community network and more than a dozen public toilets still run by the Council, with more toilets due to be invested in for our parks this summer. All the Bristol Labour women councillors have pulled together this year, campaigning against changes planned by the local NHS. Thanks to these efforts, spearheaded by Jill, Celia and Brenda, along with women from across the city, consultations were extended, plans to limit access to IVF treatment were dropped, and a cut to breast cancer reconstruction services has been put on hold. Having celebrated the 70th birthday of the NHS earlier this month, Celia's golden motion later today reminds us of the need to fight for truly universal healthcare in Bristol and beyond, including around mental health. When the world feels more uncertain than ever, it's never been more important for Bristol to stand up proud as a city of sanctuary, one of Ron Stone's finest achievements. Ruth, who coordinates our involvement in the Inclusive Cities Network, has led the way on refugee rights for many years. Her leadership saw the Labour group become the first party in the city to back Dignity, Not Destitution campaign, underscoring our commitment to some of the most vulnerable people in our society. BCFM's Diverse Politician of the Year Awards adds to her MBE and shows what a credit she is to this administration. To sum up, thank you, Marvin, for your speech today. Thank you to the Cabinet and the group for your hard work too, and to council officers for implementing our progressive agenda for Bristol. Here's to another year of Labour delivering for Bristol.
And now over to Councillor Weston to respond as Leader of the Conservatives.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Before I begin on the political diatribe, which I'm sure you will all enjoy, I actually just thought we might want to take a moment at this point. Bristol and Britain have had an unprecedented heat wave. You may have noticed it's reduced the rather large gentleman like myself into what can only be described as a sweaty mess. But we have workers that work for us from this council, collecting bins, repairing roads, that are out there in all manner of conditions. Now, I take my food waste bin from my front door to the edge of the driveway, and I hate doing that. Imagine trying to empty that day in, day out in 28-degree heat. Now, I know that there have been delays, and I know there have been problems, but from behalf of my group, and I think the council, I think we should put on record our thanks to our employees who are working in some pretty unprecedented conditions at the moment. And so from us, thank you. I fear that will be the end of any applause that I receive from this section of the council. So let's give it a go. All right. Austerity. Let's head this one straight on. Oh, you're in favour? Oh, that's a surprise. Comrade, you're in the wrong bench. I would also ask you to view your history. Yeah, that was definitely tongue-in-cheek, I can assure you. Your history. Actually, Labour are the ones that started cutting the local government budgets in 2008. So you might want to just check that one. What I would say, though, is this. You said politics is about priority, and it is. And we as a country have to live within our means. We pay £53 billion a year in debt interest. That is more than education, that's twice as much as defence, that's every single year, £1 billion a week. Now that's running up a bill today that you hand to your children and expect them to pay off in the future. That is irresponsible. It is, that's the way it works. 53 billion. Now we've got the deficit itself down from 158 billion, and it's gone down to about 43 billion. That's gone down. It has, you can argue that, but that's the way it's gone. Now, this is a problem. It is obviously not fun. No one goes into politics to make things tough. But we have to live within our means. But even with that, this council still has choices that it chooses to make. And the mayor has choices that he chooses to make. He chooses to spend more this year on PR and communications. That's his choice. He chooses to keep a Brussels office open even though we're leaving. That's his choice. There are choices this council makes. It's a £360 million budget. You have those choices. But I'm afraid to say that I don't recognise a lot of what the mayor has described. I actually see us as quite a divided city. And not just on the normal grounds that people talk about, but actually I see a city that's divided on centre and suburbs. The city always seems to be talking about what happens in the centre and doesn't seem to talk about those of us that represent communities on the outskirts. Those communities that are actually finding it harder to move around these days. The communities that do feel under threat, as their libraries are threatened and then not threatened. And I would just say on the libraries, you talk about your fiscal responsibility. You've taken money out of reserves to pay for libraries. I remember the mayor sitting there and condemning anyone that suggested that we might be doing that. You put money in reserves to do it. Oh, isn't that convenient? So I'm sorry, but you told us to use reserves was not financial propriety. It wasn't what you do, and that's exactly what's happening. I see our parks under threat. I see our toilets closing. I would talk about the litter. You mentioned earlier on 8,000 fines in the city centre. Brilliant, it's in the centre. But our outer parks and communities look like a litter bomb has gone off every weekend. Please, get them out. I encourage you to do so. They haven't issued. We have asked. We would love to have them. Feel free to send them our way. And I mean, it's been mentioned on the arena. Now, this is obviously the fun one. I'm loving this one. It's obviously the wrong question day, but I would ask the mayor to think on this. I think he's asking the wrong questions. But there seems to be a lot of that going around today. Do we want an arena? Yes, we want an arena. Right. Where's the best location? That, for me, is critical. I think the best location is in the centre. Okay? The next question, can we afford it? Now, we know from OSM the 10 hours that have been dismissed from OSM, and Councillor Gollop chaired it, apparently so imperfectly, according to the Mayor. I'm sure you're crying today. But I actually thought it did a good job, because it flushed out a load of additional information. It flushed out that the operators were willing to pay a little bit more. It flushed out that the developers were willing to keep it in their budget. I would have thought these conversations would have been had over the last 6 months. Yeah. Instead, they came out at a meeting apparently completely new. So, on the arena, do we want an arena? Where's best location? Can we afford it? All of this points to Temple Island, and you know that. You agree with that. Your mayor disagrees with you. But I don't just see a divided city, I'm seeing increasingly a divided chamber. Because the mayor would tell you that this is all us, we're playing politics. Does anyone remember when George Ferguson sat there and said the exact same thing? Anytime someone disagreed with George, oh, you're playing politics where I'm taking the tough decisions. The person in the chair may change, the rhetoric doesn't seem to. It doesn't. So let's review. Over the last year, Marvin obviously realised that Comrade Corbyn was staying, and then decided to tone up his anti-government rhetoric, leading that march 2 days or 3 days before he went to Westminster to ask for money and wondered why no one turned up. Not to the march, but from the government. He then got disappointed with the fact that we were critical of him. Anyone would have thought we were opposition councillors. And then decided that to get everyone out of the cabinet, he would just have his own cabinet people in there. Now, we shouldn't feel sorry for that. He's got rid of as many Labour cabinet members as he's got rid of opposition cabinet members, so maybe that's just going round. I mean, we're going to make pin badges. And then we had the situation where we're going to alter the Constitution, which we know how close it was in your group meeting on that one. It wasn't universally popular, but you did it. You gerrymandered the Constitution. That's fine. And now we come back to the arena again, where the mayor is dismissing anyone that disagrees with him. Thin-skinned politicians is not what we need in the city. And that seems to be what we're having. And I'm sorry, I do not recognise what you are proposing today. Now, I wish you well on a lot of things. For example, I would talk about the housing. I'm delighted that the housing seems to be on track. You've inherited some of it. You inherited the housing delivery company, which we put forward. You're getting money from the government to try and deliver these projects. That is very welcome. We wish you well on that. Actually, I've got a couple of other sites we might want to have a chat about on that. We want to deliver housing. We need to, and then you come to transport. Well, I'm sorry, transport's going to be critical, but I heard nothing in the Mayor's speech today on rail. We talked about buses, they're part of the solution. Where was the ambition on rail? You want to do an underground? We were spending £4.5 million on a feasibility study for an underground. We don't have the £4.5 billion it will require to pay for it, but, you know, we'll spend the £4.5 million on the study. Well, fantastic. That's a station. We should be looking at Metro West Phase 3, Metro West Phase 4. We should be looking at Metrobus Phase 4, Metrobus Phase 5. We should be looking at all of this, and that was not mentioned today. I'm afraid I see a divided city. I see you have to work with them, you have to ask. This is how it works. Are you working with them on it? We have to work together, and I see a divided city, I see a divided chamber, and I, for one, do not recognise what the Mayor has said. We'll work with him where we can, but it's increasingly obvious to us that the Mayor has very little interest in working with anyone of any party that disagrees with him remotely. I hope your cabinet members are sitting comfortably. We have bets on who's the next out. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
And now, Councillor Comey to respond as leader of the Green Group, please.
I don't really like the idea of political opposition. I didn't come into politics for the fighting and the tit for tat. I came into politics because I was attracted to the idea of working together for the common good. And as Greens, we have managed some of that in the 2 years I've been a councillor. We've approached other parties to alter their motions, and I'm thankful to Labour members for accepting our alterations to their motion this evening. We've seconded motions proposed by other parties, and I thank the Lib Dems for inviting us to second their motion this evening. or even co-wrote them, as we did with the motion on the NHS and the Sustainability and Transformation Plan. We've contributed in Cabinet for as long as we were allowed. We've proposed helpful amendments to the budget, which this year was so sensible, so unarguable, so financially sound, that they received full cross-party support. And that's the kind of spirit that we need to move this city towards a positive vision of our future. Because Bristol can be a place where all of us can live healthier, happier lives in communities strong enough and resilient enough to weather the global storms, both literal and metaphorical. However, sometimes I do have to react to what is put in front of me. Just as I had to vote against a budget that, despite our best efforts, was still full of cuts. We've heard a lot of beautiful words today. We keep hearing a lot of beautiful words. But the gulf between those words and the reality of the actions I see, and what people around me are experiencing, is so huge that I can't be silent. I find myself like the child in the nursery story who just can't help blurting out that the emperor isn't quite as well dressed as he thinks. And I can't keep myself from speaking out. I had a look at some of the words from our council's organisational values to see how we're doing against them. Words like respect, care, grace, jar against actions like firing people who've worked with you and for you for years without even having the decency to speak to them yourself. Words like collaborative suggest a willingness to ask for other perspectives and respect different opinions. They don't sit well with launching harsh public criticism the instant your colleagues don't come to the conclusion you want. I hear words like well-being, then see the city thrown at the mercy of investors who are invited to build high-rises to maximise the return on their investment and further inflate local rents and house prices, regardless of what the people of Bristol actually want, which I think is homes that are built to live well in as part of a community. The talk of enabling and working with citizens is not reflected by simultaneously dumping more work on volunteers to fill the gaps in what you aren't willing to fund, and at the same time pulling the rug out from under their feet by withdrawing the support and cooperation that used to be given from the council side. How can we square the claim that this administration is delivering for the city when, for example, their eagerness to review everything done by the previous administration means that the whole highways department is busy chasing their tails and no community can get a road safety sign put up or a double yellow line painted around a dangerous corner? Sometimes it feels like the words take priority over the reality, so that it becomes more important to be able to put on an election leaflet that the children's centres are open than to actually safeguard the services they provide. So you end up keeping them open as buildings, maybe, but with jobs and services cut to the point that they're not necessarily really children's centres anymore. This city needs more than words. This city needs openness and transparency, a genuine commitment to a democracy that gives people a real say in the decisions that affect their lives. Opening up your plans to scrutiny and possibly criticism can be hard, but it does lead to better decisions. This city needs urgent action on air quality, on achieving environmental sustainability, and on making real steps to mitigate and adapt to climate change. That requires not only the willingness to listen to all the evidence, but also the courage to then stand up and lead when it is clear where the evidence points. This city needs planning and transport design that looks to the future and doesn't assume that everyone driving around in private cars, with the social separation and the huge waste of resources and space that entails, is the only way things can be forever. This city needs a commitment to social justice and community that doesn't run and hide at the first sign of lobbying from commercial interests. We know that times are hard and money is short, and that many of the challenges facing the city, from the rise in homelessness to the crisis in our mental health, have bigger, broader causes than the actions of the City Council. But that doesn't excuse us from doing what we can. If our ability to act is limited, it strengthens the need for every decision to be a small move in the right direction. If the challenges facing us are complex and far-reaching, all the more reason to include the dissenting voices that help us to build a richer picture. If we are serious about building a better Bristol for all our futures, it is going to take more than fine words to get us there. We need actions that live up to them.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Negus to respond as Leader of the Liberal Democrats, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Unusually, I'm going to be reading quite a lot of this, so I do apologise in advance for any halting or tripping over, because I have some problems with some of this stuff. I applaud optimism. I think it's something that we should all have in spades. It's necessary to get through what we're doing. But when it's wrapped up in Montezuma magnificence, it's just over the top and completely rewriting national and local history, and more than that, ignoring the legacy that came to this council from previous administrations, and I'm very proud of the one that I served in, which was actually trying to function through a monumental meltdown in 2008 and onwards. The other thing that I wanted to pick up from what the Mayor was saying, and I'm going to go on and say some of my own things after that, but he mentioned collaborative working, which is something that we all have to get through, and as councillors, we should be involved in it all the time. It should be high on our list of strengths and the way we achieve things. A lot of people outside this council would not support what's been said today about collaborative working with this council. It's been hard going, it's been obstructive, it's been very, very clunky. And we've got through some things, and some were mentioned today, despite the way that collaborative working has gone on with the council, and that's something we need to look at rather better. The arena decision, and I will come to this quickly and then pass right through it. Of course, the arena decision should be based on facts. The scrutiny commissions have been asking for those facts for many months. We still only got part of the facts, and we were told that we've got another decision stage to go through when we've got the other facts, which we actually asked for in October last year and earlier this year. This has been a truncated process which frankly could have been done so much better. And it's been denied and ignored, and more clunkiness all the way through. I don't know what the right decision is. I've got a pretty good idea of where I want this to go, and I would base it certainly on facts. But you need to get the facts, and you need to make sure that you're speaking to the people who've got the facts and making sure they're presenting it so everybody can be involved in making that assessment and that appraisal. And we've heard, finally today, it's been acknowledged, the budget amendment that the Lib Dems made, the biggest budget amendment that had ever been brought into this chamber, trying to save 10 million quid a year. We're actually, it's now been acknowledged, we're borrowing that money to actually solve problems created by saving that money in the first place. And the libraries are the first manifestation of that. I'm sure there will be others. The libraries are tethered to a date of 2020, which might have some significance. But we are concerned about this double-handed dealing. It's not straightforward. Things are kept from elected councillors. We are not given the information we need to help play a meaningful role in making decisions to benefit this whole city. I certainly don't like, and Councillor Comrie referred to it, I certainly would much rather work with people in this chamber. And many of you will know that because you've worked alongside us. You know what we're capable of. You know what we're trying to achieve here. Some of you have actually applauded us for that. and thank you. That's where we would naturally come from. But in fact, all the time, we are scratching away trying to get information, the information which frankly should be available if we're going to be a part of this decision-making process. And we're grown-ups. We need to be able to help and assure our electorate that things are being done in the way that we can believe in. And we can't possibly do that without the information that's being withheld from us. So, you will know us as a progressive party. We always have been. And we are not here to try and block good intentions. That's nothing that we've tried to do at any time. And we're always for the lookout for opportunities and trying to build cooperation and constructive conversations. You will know that we do that. You've been with us. We support, for example, this administration's engagement with organisations across the city, which is called the One City Project. We support that. It's been around for a long time in other administrations. Everyone's had a go at it. Some of us have been here longer than others, and a lot of us have been here a lot longer than many of the officers that we're now working with. But the fact is that we've had these conversations over a long, long period of time. It's the way to work in a city. You engage with all people. But in this case, we're not engaging as well as we should do with the public. We're not engaging as well as we should do with all councillors. But if this comes off, if this does something good for this city, I'll get behind it. I'll shout and scream and applaud it. And I hope it's getting there in a better way than some previous attempts have tried to get to. But there are a lot of vested interests in this city, and we've got to break some of those down. Some of those vested interests, which ostensibly appear to be batting in our direction, are not. They have their own concerns. They have their own parish to support. And we've got to try and make people understand and break this one city argument down into really making better opportunities for everybody in this city. Because opportunities to grow, to take chances, are things that we need to build up and to offer and to give to people where it's needed. At the same time, we've got to break down those obstructions and those prejudices which hinder people from making that sort of progress. And we're up for that, and we've been doing that as long as we've been in this chamber and batting away. But fundamentally, where we're coming from as a party is trying to have a leadership and a system in this city that sets down a very clear, sustainable future for Bristol. Now, by sustainable, of course, many of you will mean financial sustainability. I accept that. But there's social sustainability and fundamentally environmental sustainability. This is where I come from. This is where I've been ever since university, of radically do it back. But the fact is that the people of Bristol look to us as a compendium of ideas and approaches, different approaches, I'm very pleased to say, approaches that we need to meld and to knock sparks off each other, because the best decisions come out of things where people do not agree. If you sit in a room with 3 or 4 people and everybody nods, frankly, you walk away from it with nothing achieved. If you get through a room with 100 people with a great deal of disagreement and come out with a consensus, or maybe not even a consensus, something really quite wacky that you never expected was there in the first place, then you've achieved something. You've actually moved forward, and that's what the people of this city expect us to do. We're not here to have a grand title. We're not here, frankly, to have a pop at each other. We are here to try and seek opportunities, be creative, and move forward. And I hope we can do that creatively and in a cooperative way. And having said all that, of course, I've completely lost where I am, so I'll pick it all up and do it by rote. We have achieved something in the past in this city which is still haltingly going forward. I applaud the efforts. Councillor Weston mentioned housing. I've always been very, very strong on housing and homelessness. It's something which I believe, frankly, if you haven't got a roof over your head, you haven't got anything like a start in your life. But there are other things. I heard what was said about care leavers and provision for them, which is something that we should all feel very strongly about. This is something that we need all to cooperate on. But all of the grand things that have been said about transport, which I know that we all feel very, very strongly about, some of those are happening precious slowly. We are seeing some advances. At last, after 10 years, or 9 years at least in this council, I've seen the access cards, the passes which are now used, which we tried to bring in 2009 and actually put money behind trying to achieve it.
Last minute now, Councillor.
Thank you. And it's been a struggle to get vested interests to go along with that. And this is what we've got to break down. We've got to be bigger. We've got to have higher ambitions. We've got to make it absolutely clear where we stand and what we want to achieve and bring people along with us. And those people that won't come along with us, those people are obstructive and a drain on this council and do things that cause us pain and money and reduce the well-being of our citizens, we've got to stamp down on that. We've got to make this the best city we can with the available assets we've got. And some of those are out there from people that are creating problems for us and causing us difficulties. And Mayor, if I can end up on a final note, if I may, I came to you, do you remember, and talked to you about my ideas? Just reflect for a moment on the reception I got when I came to speak to you. That was not cooperative. The answers to the questions we had earlier today were bizarre if we're going to be charitable and quite awful if we're going to be realistic. That is not the way to run this city council. It is not the way to engender the cooperation and the support which you should demand from everybody here. It's a factor of the mayoral system that we have one person at the apex who is under attack from everybody else and feels beleaguered, and some of that evidence is showing. I'm afraid it's ragged at the edges. Let's get more positive. Let's engage with people in this city and in this chamber, and let's all try and make this to work together, because most of us will broadly support the way we're going, but we don't like the way it's being done, and we don't like the system under which all this is being played out. So think on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, group leaders. And now the Mayor has an opportunity to respond, and you have 5 minutes to do so, please.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I mean, many claims being made about the approaches to collaborative working and the nature. You all know each other as well. So we don't define ourselves in the way we operate in terms of me. We define it in terms of the way we operate each other. So I hope there's some integrity in the kind of sense checking amongst yourselves as well. You know, I sometimes feel that you know, we just see and experience the city quite differently. I think we've done well in bringing ambition and aspiration and focus to Bristol, and that change in tone and attitude and approach is certainly being picked up by city partners and by people outside the city as well. And any of you, in the name of collaboration, every 6 months now we have around 140, 150 chief execs and directors from right across the city come together to talk about how we can work collaboratively to deliver for Bristol. From the public sector, the private sector, voluntary community sector, faith organisations. Any of you are absolutely welcome to come, and you can participate in those sessions. I mean, I'm being beyond that. What's on offer is a game of ping pong, you know. Councillor Weston talked about having the right priorities. We'll stick to those priorities. We want to get big things done for Bristol. A mass transit system, building homes, taking care of adult social care, delivering for our young people through our children's charter, improving mental health and well-being, a sustainable, inclusive future. And, you know, spending time getting involved in political ping pong in this chamber does not deliver on that. So you're welcome to it. The offer's still there. You've got a big vision. You want to get stuff done. Let's have a conversation and we'll support you to do it.
That concludes agenda item 8. So now we move on to agenda item 9, which is corporate parenting strategy. Can I ask Councillor Godwin, Cabinet Member for Children's Services, to move the report? And so you're aware, I've allowed a little bit of extra time because I know you've brought a couple of special guests with you today.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So I think we're going from the most divisive topic on the agenda to the most unifying, I hope. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to once again speak about corporate parenting in the Chamber. As many of you know, I consider this one of our most serious responsibilities as a council, and we have to make sure that we continue to advocate, champion and nurture those children that are in our care and our care leavers, just as we would our own children. Since our last Ofsted report in 2014, Bristol has made a number of improvements in corporate parenting, and we often outperform our statistical neighbours and core cities that we're measured against. However, we can't be complacent, and indicators cannot convey the lived experiences of our looked after children and care leavers. We must have boundless ambition for the young people in our care and ensure that there are real and accessible opportunities for them to thrive and reach their full potential. The pledge that you each have in front of you, and we thought about whether to put one on each table for sort of environmental reasons, but if you don't want to take it home, please leave it and we'll reuse it. But that pledge is there to demonstrate that it's a co-production between ourselves at the Council, our partners, and most importantly, the young people who are at the heart of everything that we do as corporate parents. The refreshed strategy and the pledge builds on the achievements of our previous strategy that was published in 2015, and it also aims to address some of the new challenges that we're facing. We are making some good progress, including exempting care leavers from council tax. We've won over £2 million of investment for the region that encourages care leavers into education, employment and training. And we have plans to build smaller, more appropriate children's homes in Bristol, as well as our wider Strengthening Families programme. However, we still have some work to do to ensure the outcomes for our looked after children are as positive as possible. We need to do more work to drive down the gap in educational attainment and the number of looked after children that are excluded from or not attending school. We need to give children the stability of care that they deserve and demand, and that means retaining our foster carers, our social workers and key professionals by recognising their value and their contribution. We need to support our young people who do return home and help them to stay in touch with family and loved ones when they cannot. We want to ensure more young people remain in the city instead of being placed outside Bristol, and we must ensure that the mental and physical health needs of our children are paramount. All our partners should have the opportunity to support this corporate parenting pledge and strategy. And with this in mind, we've designed some specific asks for the city. We are delighted that so many city partners are already stepping up to be part of our EPIC offer. This year we'll see our second annual EPIC Awards, which is an empowering celebration of our children in care. This will also include our Stars Award for care leavers. Over 20 organisations have already pledged to sponsor awards or offer prizes. We also plan to launch our EPIC card this year, a VIP card for children and their foster carers to ensure that they can access the best of Bristol's cultural and sporting attractions. We urge businesses and organisations to open their doors to looked after children and their carers by offering appropriate price points and discounts. Members, use your networks to make this happen. 2018 has also seen the launch of Career Coach, an innovative coaching programme linking looked after children with long-term coaches to guide them and support them through their educational journey, including access to relevant and worthwhile work experience. This programme could only have happened with the collaboration of city partners, and I thank the Bristol Works team and the Cabot Learning Federation, in particular Tim Holmes, for making this happen. And finally, we've modernised the way we run our corporate parenting panel, ensuring that our young people feel welcome to participate and shape our agendas. Please come along, all members are welcome. Before we hear from Jake, Ridvan, Sukhaya and Lakeisha about what the pledge means to them, I would like to say that I look forward to working with members, partners and our young people to realise the vision and pledges before you today, and I thank all members for their continued support. But now let's hear from the most important people in the room, and some people who I have to say have already had by listening to the previous debate, I think we've already shaped a few opinions. So we probably won't hear those now, but we will hear, I hope, a little bit about what the corporate parenting pledge and strategy means to them.
So hello, I'm Jake. Hello, I'm Ridwan. And I'm Sakaya, and we're all members of the Bristol Children in Care Council, and everyone in this room tonight is a member of our corporate family.
We are here to launch the updated version of the pledge, which is your cooperate parents' promise to all young children in care in Bristol.
We worked with a local artist to improve our artwork. We wanted it to look more Bristol and more upbeat, and we think it looks really good.
We hope that you will read the pledge carefully, because it's the full promises you have made to us and all the other children in care. And our job as members of the Children in Care Council is to make sure you keep these promises.
One of the promises in the pledge is that you will listen to us, and that's why we're here tonight, to remind you that we're real children and that these promises are important to us and our lives. We need the whole council to support us and listen to us when we are in care, and to help us plan and prepare as we get older for leaving in care and moving on.
We need you to look out for us as if we're your own children, and provide the best carers, social workers and services for us all.
We need your help to look after our physical and mental health. We need your support, protection and encouragement.
So please, take the time to read this carefully and think about us, and remember,
it's important to never break your promises to children.
Okay, we're just going to have Lakeisha is going to read us one of her own poems now as well.
I know it's going to be hard sometimes, but you've got to keep going. Never give up, keep your head held high. Never look back, the past is the past, because I'm going to make my way through the big windy path. Mums are mums, dads are dads, some are good, some are bad, and they can make you sad. Mums are mums, dads are dads, I bet they love you even though they didn't mean to hurt you. You might have foster parents or nans who care, but the person who really loves you is the person that's there. Some people make lots of mistakes, but I have lots of opportunities to take. I'm going to be the best of the best. You can go wrong in life, but you've got to make it right. Mum, you tried to care for me, and I know you found it hard, but you done the best for me by letting me have a different family. Dad, you have 3 kids. We're going to make you proud. We won't let you down. I hope we don't make you frown. Life in care was the best thing that happened to me, but unfortunately not everyone has the best opportunity. Some kids move from home to home feeling sad and alone. Someday they will find their forever family, and I hope you'll be happy like my sister and me, who enjoy their life with their new family. People used to stare at kids in care, but now we walk on by with our heads held high.
Thank you very, very much. And I'd just like to say, as First Citizen and on behalf of Bristol, how very, very proud we are of all of you. And thank you for coming today. And now what we must do is go on to have the report seconded. So I will invite Councillor Comley to do that for us, please.
That's a tough act to follow. But I'm delighted to rise to second this report, because I'd agree with Helen that looking after the children in our care is our most important duty. And the corporate parenting panel is also one of my favourite bits of my job as a councillor. That's partly because it's a group of councillors from all parties working together, willing to ask difficult questions and provide challenge on behalf of our children in care. It's also because the team working on children's services are so willing to listen and rise to that challenge, as can be seen by the improvements in the service since 2014. But most of all is because children in care, care leavers and foster carers are all willing to take the time to come and talk to us. Sorry, that was a brilliant poem. They advise and inform us about their real experience of council services and what really matters to them, so that we can focus our efforts on those real priorities. It's so important that the people we serve should be at the centre of what we do. And so I'm so grateful that you've come in today to address full council. I just remind you that all councillors are corporate parents, whether you come to the panel or not. And it's important for all of us to be advocates for our children in care. We need to recruit foster carers. We have foster carers retiring, and they need to be replaced if we're going to be able to continue to offer children the stable, long-term placements they need. We need schools, communities, organisations to support our high aspirations for our children in care and make sure they can access opportunities to shine. We need employers both to support their employees who foster and to offer opportunities like work experience to our children in care. You as councillors are a bridge into the city who can carry that message. So whether you come and join the panel or not, please do what you can to support fostering and children's services.
Thank you. I'll now invite our next speaker, who is Councillor Leslie Alexander for the Conservatives, please.
My Lord Mayor, my fellow colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, and particularly the children and that wonderful poem, you're the most important people here today. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this report. I welcome it and all the information that it contains. Bristol was in a very different place 2 or 3 years ago, and when we were not doing so well, and the actions put in place then have improved our outcomes greatly. However, there is still a lot to do, and the new actions outlined in today's strategy will I am sure, go a long way to improving further. It is good that the Council talks and, more importantly, listens to the young people in their care. After all, it is only what any good parent would do. I have met many people who are fostering, and I'm always amazed at their dedication and care. And about 6 months ago, I was invited to a party that the council were giving for its foster parents. And I was able to talk to a lot of people there, and they were absolutely wonderful and they're inspirational. There was people that had more than one child, people that were long-term fostering, some of them were short-term fostering, but all of them were doing an absolutely brilliant job. And they all considered that those who had attained their majority and could have left were still either with them, or if they had moved, considered themselves part of the family and came back for major family events. We must continue to look after our foster carers because they are brilliant, and I endorse this new strategy. Thank you.
And to our next speaker, Councillor Clough for the Liberal Democrats, please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor, and thank you to our guests from the Children in Care Council. The corporate strategy for corporate parenting is a wonderful document I'd encourage everybody to read. We have made great strides in how foster care and children's social services have been going in this city in the past few years. Hopefully we'll get a far better Ofsted review this time. I'd like to thank the people from social services are here as well for the excellent job that they do in informing us we're taking part in corporate parenting. and encourage the rest of the members to occasionally attend the meetings. I grew up with foster children in the house. I know how much difference a good foster carer can make to the lives. I still have foster siblings that I'm in contact with, and would like to encourage again other councillors to help with the recruitment of foster carers. They make a huge difference to children's lives. In fact, if any of you are in a position to foster, have you thought about it? But I've forgotten what I was going to say to finish. Thank you for listening to me, and good luck.
Councillor Godwin, would you like to respond, or is this going over to the Mayor?
I'll just say it's a fantastic piece of work, and as many of the sentiments in the room raised, that this is a challenge, being a good corporate parent and making sure that we're a city in which every child, irrespective of the conditions into which they're born or grow up, has every opportunity to get us to the best possible start in life. It's something that we have a responsibility to drive as a local authority, but something we can only deliver together as a city. Whether that's working, as has been listed earlier on, about employers coming forward and offering work experience, making sure we have adequate support in schools, making sure that we're supporting families to come forward as foster families and as families to adopt as well. So we know the sheer scale of the ambition that we've put down and the call that we're making on the city. I thank you for being here today. It makes it real, and I hope you have a taste for speaking in public and events like this. You know, sometimes they say the world is run by those who turn up, and you turned up today, and by very fact that you are here making your voices heard, you would have influenced what goes on in this organisation, and people will walk away not having forgotten that you were here today making a statement, and hopefully making sure that commitment that we need to make is firmly embedded in everything we do. So thank you for being here, and it also is an example of the way we need to work. No one working in isolation. You need to be at the forefront. Your experiences, your voice needs to be at the forefront of what we do. So much appreciation, and thanks to all the councillors who are going to go out, I know, and champion this paper, and making sure that we are recruiting the support from the families and the organisations in the city we need.
If we can give them a clap as they exit as well, please. Okay, so now we will move to a verbal vote on the report recommendations as set out. So all those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say no. Great, the vote is carried. So now we move on to agenda item 10, which is the Audit Committee annual report for 2017 to 2018. Can I ask Councillor Stevens to move the report, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. There's just 7 councillors in audit, compared with 44 in scrutiny. So I'm going to try and explain what audit do and compare our work with scrutiny. Both should do work as different specialists so that the council gives and gets good value for money. Both work better if the council prepares good business plans. In audit, we look at the systems for decision making and their effective implementation. We don't look at the decisions themselves, unless after time that decision becomes something of a car crash. Then we're asked to investigate like accident investigators and look for the lessons learned for the future. Scrutiny is quite different. Scrutiny should look at the evidence coming to the decision makers at the time and ensure, for example, that the risks are understood, test the accuracy of the data. The evidence that scrutiny sees is best displayed in a council business plan.
A good example of approach was a report we got in November, why we had to hand back £3.3 million of Warm Up Bristol grant to the government. The report showed that back in 2014, the Cabinet had been deliberately optimistic in the amount of money it applied for in order to get some money at all. And later on, they were also aware that the main contractor was in a risky financial situation. So from Audit's point of view, that was fine. The risks were appreciated at the time by Cabinet. We did find some improvements, like better project management, especially, and aspects of governance. Scrutiny's role back in 2014 was to make sure that those possible risks and consequences were well understood by the decision makers. The biggest car crash we've been asked to investigate, a multiple pile-up of systemic failure, was the one that caused our financial black hole in the summer of 2016. That triggered a Bundred report which recommended a number of key areas for improvement, and we're seeing some of them come in. They included council business plans. This year, I've looked at 3. Agile Working, which had a published payback of 100 years. Colston Hall, which had a brilliant business plan by the Bristol Music Trust, but none I've seen for the council, which took on the risks.
Let's conclude now, please, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. By the way, I recommend the report.
Thank you. And please can I ask Councillor Joss Clark to second the report, please?
Thank you. I rise to second this report today. As Chair of the Committee for the previous municipal year, I can safely say that we had a packed calendar of reports to consider throughout the year. This task was helped in January by the appointment of 2 independent members and the opportunity for a new perspective on the Council's capacity to deliver on its priorities has been welcomed. Having said that, the committees strive to work in the best interests of the city and a common goal. This has been underpinned by the life skills of the membership and also the ongoing training that the committee receives. Regular training keeps members well informed and enables them to understand this complex area of the Council's business more fully. I'm pleased to say that the peer review of internal audit gave some really useful feedback and highlighted some processes that needed to be worked on. The implementation of the changes were addressed as a matter of priority. This review only serves to heighten the committee's concerns about the vacancy rate in this area and felt that there was a strong business case to increase staff numbers. Looking forward to the year ahead, the work programme will allow members to evaluate the work of the Council and enable, challenge and scrutinise the robustness of the Council and its processes. I wish the new Chair, Councillor Mead, the best wishes, and thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. And we'll now go to the debate, starting with Councillor Mead, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and keep this fairly brief. But the Audit Committee consistently proves itself to be a very well-functioning part of the Council, because people do forget their party allegiances when they come in the door, and they focus their energy on the reports in front of them. And it's interesting to see how easy it is and how lovely it is to see cross-party working at its best. And certainly Jos did a great job of steering that committee last year, especially with big personalities like myself and Clive to keep in rein, because we can apparently be occasionally a bit talkative. There are no speaking time limits in audit committees, and I'm sure that the Lord Mayor will be relieved that she is not chair of that meeting this year. Jos did a great job of chairing it, took over. We had an increase in the amount of training that people had, and that's improved the work that we do. And we also had less churn and turnover of councillors at the end of the calendar year, municipal year, which meant that expertise stayed on the committee and we didn't have it diluted. One important thing that turned up was the whistleblowing policy and the need, and I would stress this to the Mayor and Cabinet members, the need to make sure that our whistleblowing policy protects the anonymity of council workers who may flag up concerns. Just because in a time when there are cuts and there are people losing their jobs, we don't want people to be too afraid to come forward if they have serious concerns. And we've seen in other parts of the country, particularly in the issue of child sexual exploitation, the danger of what happens when whistleblowing doesn't happen and it needed to. Although, interestingly, our whistleblowing protection doesn't apply to councillors. So I assume we take our reputations and our careers in our own hands. Well, speak for yourself, Mark. But I've seen an improvement, an ongoing improvement in our financial management over the last couple of years, and particularly I need to stress the great work done by Denise Murray and her team. And also I want to praise Jonathan Idle, who joined the audit team. He certainly doesn't live up to his name, he's anything but idle, and he's done great work at keeping councillors informed, well-trained and on the ball. I'd like to end by just highlighting one or two issues that cropped up from the previous administration. And they highlighted the importance of making sure that expensive items are properly scrutinised and that any findings from scrutiny committees are listened to. Because sometimes things can go wrong and therefore that ends up costing the council money. But it's been a great year. I'm looking forward to working with colleagues over this year, and I'd like to just say a big thank you also to Liz Radford, who's not a high-profile councillor, but as a qualified auditor adds immensely to our meetings.
Thank you. And over to Councillor Radford.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Mead. I'm not quite a qualified auditor, but one day maybe. Firstly, can I thank Councillor Clark for her sterling work as Chair of Audit Committee this year. It hasn't always been a smooth ride, however she's always been very professional and fair throughout. Audit Committee is a necessary tool for all large public organisations. However, they are only as good as the internal audit team feeding into the committee. Many teams within our council are understaffed, and this is no exception for our internal audit team. They work tirelessly and take on new projects at short notice, having to drop scheduled work which should still be undertaken. Audit Committee regularly feed back their concern to the Section 151 officer that the internal audit team is too understaffed, and in the light of the Bundred report, it is imperative they have adequate permanent, not temporary employees. How can we have complete confidence in the Council's internal control arrangements if our internal audit team are unable to undertake the breadth and depth of work needed? Audit Committee had a long stretch with no independent members on the committee. This gave councillors grave concern, as their internal audit expertise gives members invaluable support. Thankfully, 2 independent members have been recruited and in their short time have already provided us with sound knowledge and insight. Clive has already mentioned a few of the concerns that we've had raised over the last year, and we've been very vocal on other things like the Directorate risk registers not being scrutinised rigorously enough, councillors not having CRB checks due to their contact with young and vulnerable people, and delegated powers not being given by full council, maybe not being followed. There's much work for Audit Committee, working towards ensuring better confidence in our governance, and I look forward to the next year working with Councillor Mead as Chair.
Thank you. I will now call on Cabinet Member Cheney to respond.
I was just going to thank everyone who's been involved in audit for the past year and in the year going forward. I know it's quite a thankless task, and the sort of improvement of processes in this organisation, in any organisation of this size, is a job that is never finished. So I welcome the challenge. I've enjoyed working with all of you, I think, where I've had to, and yeah, and also can I thank Denise and Jonathan Idle as well, actually, for the excellent work that they've done. Thank you.
Right, and now let's move the vote on the report recommendation as set out. Again, another verbal one. So all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, please say no. The vote is... So that concludes agenda item 10. So we now move on to agenda item 11. Proposals for revisions to the terms of reference for the Audit Committee. And I would like to go back to Councillor Mead to move the report.
Thank you, Chair. This received cross-party support at the Audit Committee. Just wanted to flag up a couple of bits about it. The reason that we decided to have a subcommittee dealing with ethics and values was that in the 4 years I've been on audit, we haven't had a single ethics and values item come to us for consideration, and I believe it's been longer than that since the last one happened. But we did want to have a system whereby if a serious concern was raised about a member of the council, it could be assessed properly and by people who had been trained to deal with it. And our proposal was a simple one, that it would be a 5-member committee, 1 councillor from each party, and chaired by an independent non-councillor. And if, for example, God forbid, one of my colleagues was to end up coming before the committee for interrogation or whatever happens at these lovely meetings, then I would be the person who sat out, and it would be a 4-member team who assessed whether or not that person had broken council protocols, and that team would not include a member of the same party. That's to try and keep it fair, either to ensure that someone doesn't try and let someone off who's their mate, or that they don't twist a knife in someone that they can't stand. It's a sort of protection either way. But also it will look at the appointments of honorary aldermen and alderwomen. It's an important decision to take, but not the most important one that audit has had to do in the past. My personal frustration was that in 2016, at the same meeting that we were looking at the financial disaster that had been left behind by the exiting administration of a £29 million overspend, we were also looking at the appointment of honorary aldermen and alderwomen. And the one thing that really disappointed me about that was not just the amount of time it took, but also the fact that it was the only thing I was contacted about in advance of the meeting by senior figures in all the political parties. And it seemed to me at the time that people were more concerned about honorary aldermen than they were about a £29 million hole in our finances. I'm glad to see that our administration took a different view on that, and I hope that no committee ever has to deal with an example of that kind of mismanagement in the future. So I'd just like to move this, and it does have cross-party support.
Thank you, and now I'll ask Councillor Stevens to second the report.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So Ollie has said it all, so I'll go back to finish my talk about audit and scrutiny before I was rudely interrupted. The acid test about the improvement this year will be when the arena comes in September, and all those other aspects that we haven't seen yet, the environmental, the traffic, social value. So if that's in there, that's looking good. And it is improvement because last year when we looked at decisions, only 40% of decisions actually had a business plan at all. So to close, audit and scrutiny are quite different things, but they do share the need for good council business plans. I'd also like to thank last year's team, which was Councillor Joss Clark, and last year's chair, and last year's team, Councillors Barry Clark, Ollie Mead, who's with us again, Councillor Pearce, who's with us again, Councillor Shah, Councillor Radford, and I guess I can thank myself. Yeah. So that's it. I commend the last report and also this one to the council.
Thank you. There will be no further speakers, so we will now move to the vote on the report recommendations as set out, again verbally. So all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, please say no. The vote is carried. That concludes agenda item 11. So now agenda item 12, designation of monitoring officer. Please can I ask Councillor Cheney to move the report?
Yeah, I move this, which is the designation of Quinton Baker to be appointed as the council's monitoring officer until such time as a permanent appointment has been made. I do that and reserve my remarks.
Lord Mayor, may I make a point of order? I do apologise to both you and the Chief Legal Officer, but I have to question how we can take a report that has a flawed risk assessment in it. Now, the risk assessment either implies that we've assessed the wrong risk, or what I think it applies is that no officer has actually, or cabinet member, has actually proofread this document before it's circulated to members.
Are you referring to this agenda item?
I'm referring to this agenda item. If you look at item 10, we've assessed the head of paid service, and I don't think the role of head of paid service has anything to do with the appointment of the chief legal officer. And I think it's unfortunate if reports like this, where we know it, are circulated without anything being checked. What it actually means for reports which are more complex is absolutely frightening. So I just register that concern. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Okay, noted, thank you. So we now move to ask Councillor Hants to second the report.
Seconded, reserving my remarks as well.
Thank you. So we now move to the vote on the report recommendation as
Sorry,
set
my Lord
out.
Mayor, can we just get clarification? Is it just a typo in the report and the right person has in fact been assessed?
Yeah.
Yes, we can. Yes, and the rest of the report makes reference to the monitoring officer. Is a typo on that one line that's wrong? Yeah. Yes, we can amend it.
Right, so we have that corrected. Okay, thank you. If we can now move on to the verbal vote, please. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say no. Right, I'm now asking if we can extend time. Is it another verbal vote? So another verbal vote on extending time. Hopefully we'll be finished before 9 o'clock. But all those in favour of extending time, please say aye. Aye. All those not in favour, please say no. No. Oh dear. Would you like a recorded vote? Will it take us long to set up the electronics? Oh, we came prepared. Great. Right, we're ready then for the electronic vote in terms of extending time. If we do not extend time, we'll be finished at 5 to 9.
How long do you want to extend time for?
So to hear one motion for half an hour. So
yeah.
So you can either
Right, well, it will be till 9:15. Okay, well, the vote's up to you, so here we go, electronic vote. Please vote now. This is to extend the time of tonight's meeting. Right, so we've agreed to extend time, so let's move on now, please, to the motions. And just a reminder that all speeches must be 3 minutes or preferably less for those who would like to speak earlier. So, motion 1, mental health. And we have received an altered motion. Can I ask Councillor Phipps from Labour to move the altered motion, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The figures contained in the motion make real the impact of austerity on the public sector, including local authorities. Budget cuts have made a big impact on staffing levels in many services. And although this authority has done much and continues to do so, we must recognise that anxiety and stress have become common in the workplace. Let's be clear. Austerity has gone far enough. Setting a balanced and legal budget was and is part of the challenge faced by this administration, and we should have been better supported by the benches opposite. We know that mental health services in this city need more funds to provide the timelier services those in need deserve, including those working in the drug and alcohol sector. We have a citywide responsibility to improve mental health and wellbeing in Bristol. That's why I'm pleased to stand as the Local Government Association Mental Health Champion to make sure good mental health is a top priority for the city and to be part of Thrive, the 10-year citywide approach. Thrive focuses on prevention and early intervention, and within the 11 work streams works on initiatives ranging from the well-being of the whole population to those experiencing mental illness. It aims to tackle the causes of poor mental health and build community resilience. It's about working with the rich resources we already have in the city, and in short, is about making the best use of what we have. There's too many to list, but the key partners include Community Access Support Services, Rethink, Second Step, Bristol Mind, Bristol Ageing Better, and the social prescribing projects, Bristol Independent Mental Health, and not least our new Time to Change Hub and Champion programme. We're committed to working with children and young people, particularly those who need specific support. We have been supported by the Centre for Mental Health to produce a best approach for early intervention and are already working with both universities. As Chair of Bristol Anti-Stigma Alliance, I seek to reduce the stigma and discrimination surrounding poor mental health for all ages and groups in our communities. We understand that the voluntary sector has an important and vital role to play here, delivering many community-led opportunities across the city in unique and sometimes playful way that only they can. We already had conversations about debt and mental health, and led by Hartcliffe and Withywood Thrive, communities are already beginning to talk about what good mental health looks like.
Going to have to wrap up now, please, Councillor.
Although not essential, this is not just about money. This is about people. People we work with, people we meet, friends and families, and most important, it's all of us, listening and understanding better. Talking about mental health problems and sharing real-life stories helps to change the way we think and act towards mental health in this city, our city.
Thank you. I now ask Councillor Goggin to second the altered motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Austerity, austerity, austerity. We'll stop talking about it when this government ends this broken and cruel philosophy. This has left us with a a mental health crisis in Bristol and the country as a whole. 1 in 4 adults, or 16 million people, will suffer a mental illness at some point each year. Out of these, 400,000, or the equivalent of the entire population of Bristol, are children. They are active referrals experiencing mental health problems and being treated by the NHS. But it is estimated that another 1.2 million children suffer invisibly. Javed Khan, CEO of Barnardo's, says that currently young people's mental health is the worst in its 152-year history. This is the sad reality which I know all too well. The lack of funding means that children are unlikely to receive help unless they seriously self-harm or attempt suicide. 6,000 people a year do not get the help that they need and go on to end their lives. What a waste. People often from the most deprived backgrounds thrown onto the scrap heap or worse. I have seen our mental health provisioners being cut and cut again, mental health professionals stripped from GP surgeries. I've seen it firsthand in my own journey as a service user. I live with bipolar disorder and chronic anxiety. Without help, I could have been the 6,001st person. I was lucky, but this should not be a lottery. So this is the environment into which we launched Thrive, an ambitious 10-year plan to bring together expertise and knowledge from the health, voluntary and charity sectors. Most importantly, to intervene early.
This is why we have fought to keep open our children's centres and projects like the Breakfast Club to ensure no child is hungry. The Tories have promised more funding for the NHS, but it seems to be reliant on the magic money tree. That is the Brexit dividend, whatever that means. I'll believe it when I see it. In the meantime, I'm proud to be part of a Labour administration that is taking action. We must give a chance for all our citizens, not just to survive, but to thrive.
Thank you, Councillor, and congratulations on your maiden speech. We'll now open up to the other speakers, so let's go to Councillor Eddy for the Conservatives.
My Lord Mayor, if any motion is like the proverbial curate's egg, it must be this. Speaking personally, there can be few people in this chamber who have greater reasons to be grateful for the NHS. As some people may know, in 2010, I spent 10 months in hospital with a rare medical condition. The fact that I survived, I owe to the NHS professionals' dedication and skills. I equally share the motion's passion for tackling mental health issues. Thank God in recent times, people from the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry Down have championed this cause. Only months ago, I wrote to John A. Mercer, a Tory MP on the Commons Health Select Committee, about this very issue and received a stirring reply. It is therefore right that the former Secretary of State for Health, Jeremy Hunt, has committed unprecedented resources to addressing this issue. The motion goes further and proposes some excellent practical measures to tackle mental health within the Council. Tory members here fully support this and welcome these proposals. Then why do we not want to back this motion? Sadly, this motion is muddled, inaccurate in large parts, and utterly politically partisan. It reads as it is meant to read, as a Labour Party political broadcast. The foundation of the NHS 70 years ago is not celebrated as a great national achievement after the Second World War, but is held as a Labour victory, and only Labour councillors are applauded for the work highlighting mental health. This is both a travesty and a disgrace. From this Labour motion, one wouldn't believe the Conservative government has vowed to spend an extra £20 billion on the NHS, much more than Labour has pledged. Individual personal tragedies of students who have taken their lives at local universities are attributed in this motion in some bizarre way to the government's so-called austerity. But finally, can I just say, Lord Mayor, can I bury one Labour cannot? Contrary to your claims, there are currently more EU nationals working in our NHS since the Euro referendum. Not surprisingly, Lord Mayor, this side will be voting against.
And over to Councillor Hants from the Green Party to respond, please.
Right then. I imagine that the majority of us here will have been contacted by residents regarding mental health provision in the city, both from concerned family, friends and neighbours, and also carers of the increasing numbers of young people who are struggling to cope. What's clear And I'm sorry, but Richard, but the government fine words are buttering absolutely no parsnips as far as local provision is concerned. Many people are lurching into crisis, getting emergency treatment, and then they're packed off again till the next inevitable crisis takes place. What's particularly distressing is the plight of some parents and carers who are placed in the frankly unacceptable provision that Paul referred to, position, of having to argue that their children are displaying suicidal tendencies in order to get help from CAMHS, and that's something that nobody should have to do. Turning now to the motion in hand, there's heartening there's so much here that we can agree on. The underfunding of the NHS has long been an area that we've campaigned on with our Labour colleagues. The inadequacy of mental health provision is there for all of us to see, and it does seem particularly pernicious when we see the impact on young people. Clearly, some of the increased reporting of mental health problems is thanks to greater openness and is to be applauded. But similarly, increases in pressures from social media, along with what I can only describe as the lunacy of the new GCSE system. My oldest is 16, so come and grab me if you want the details later. They're frankly dropping like flies, has resulted in massive increases in ill health amongst young people. Note to Mr Gove, there is little point in the school system producing young people with 10 GCSEs who are so anxious and full of self-loathing they can't interact with the outside world. It's no wonder that mental health features so largely in the Youth Council manifesto. The Marmot report cited here also chimes with Green Party policy, which points to the wider determinants of mental health, and much of this motion reflects our policies of inclusion and parity of service with physical mental health. It's always foxed me that if you break a bone, you assume you'll get treatment reasonably soon. It appears to be the norm that if your mind's not so well, you can wait a few minutes to no great ill effect. Apart from being cruel, it also flies in the face of the principles of early intervention, that even the most tight-fisted of Tories, so no, in the long run, saves money. But let's make a quick personal comment about the motion here itself. It's a personal one. Whilst there's nothing that I find particularly objectionable in this motion that I can see, I also fail to see that it's going to make a huge amount of difference to the people in Bristol. For example, I'm not convinced that being reminded that the Labour Party set up the NHS in 1945 does much to change the mental health landscape in this city. Although it does serve as a useful reminder that I'm afraid the Labour group do appear to believe that they, and they alone, occupy the moral high ground. If we were to go to the bother of spending time debating motions, I, for one, would love to see it used to test the ground for new ideas, or try to deliver something that stands a chance of actually improving life in the city. The clean air motion that we all agreed on a while back, was universally supported, does spring to mind. So yes, in general terms, we're really happy to support this motion. We're happy to support the Thrive programme. It's clearly very well intentioned, and it is great that steps are being taken to do something about council staff mental health. It's all good. But as Elvis may have said, a little less conversation, a little more action, please. Thank you.
And Councillor Wright for the Liberal Democrats, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Can I start by thanking the Labour Party for accepting the alteration to the motion, which does make it more sensible. I feel I have to briefly point out, of course, that austerity began under Gordon Brown, but we've already had that argument today, so I'm not going to rehearse that. As Councillor Hans has already said, there's plenty of worthy stuff in this motion. Obviously, more resources for the health service are a no-brainer, and we certainly support that. Now, I'm a scientist, and it's in my nature to look at data and then ask why those results have come about. So, when it comes to stress in the council workforce, which is mentioned in the note in the motion quite extensively, it does seem to me that there's an elephant in the stress room, and that is this council's inability to keep hold of its senior staff. Now, obviously, continuing austerity has made the council's job more difficult, but that is, of course, true for all councils. The point is that we in Bristol have lost record numbers of staff, which other councils haven't. Now, why is this? What is it about the work environment in this council that makes so many people want to leave? This is an important question. Now, in the past, the Mayor has chosen to blame us for the recent staff departures. Yes, us, the fourth party. Now, look, I've been in Cabinet before, so I know for a fact that the senior officers in general don't give a damn about the fourth party. That's fine, we understand that. So I hope that the administration takes this motion a little bit more seriously and a little bit less flippantly, and isn't afraid to ask itself some difficult questions about what needs to change in the way this organisation is managed. The data doesn't lie. The data is the data about the people leaving. There's a problem of staff retention here in this council. Now let's use this motion to ask the questions and to find out how to fix the problem. Thank you.
Okay, and now we go back to Councillor Phipps to respond as the mover of the altered motion.
Thanks very much, everybody. So 1 in 4 people have suffered mental illness or poor mental health. So that means there are as many of us in this chamber who are affected. I think the shocking statistics actually really do speak for themselves. And I think it means we really, really must make this a priority. And I think that's what's important about this, is it makes it all of our business. It means that we're offering training for people. Go and take it. It means that we can better understand somebody who is going through a really rough time. It might mean taking more time to enable things to happen and to facilitate some of that, but I think that's what we really must do. Thrive's in its early stages. It's a 10-year programme, but it's about working in partnership, and that really, really is important. It's quite clear that we've got inadequacies in provision, and we've got to try and address that too. I don't think anyone's pretending that this is going to be an easy fix, but I think it's definitely worth trying. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
We will now move to the vote on the altered motion. This will be an electronic vote, so please get ready. And please vote now. The motion is carried. So we're going to move quickly into the second motion for this evening, our last item. And I'm going to ask Councillor Clough of the Liberal Democrats to move the motion, please. This is exit from the European Union.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. More than 2 years after the Brexit vote, the Conservative Party is in disarray. Theresa May is being held hostage to the whims of her own right wing and the Ulster Unionists, who seem determined to undermine the Good Friday Agreement. Her attempts to present a moderate Brexit have been sabotaged by members of her own party, though it is likely that her offer would have proved equally unpalatable to the European Union. Major employers feel threatened, universities are starting to struggle to attract the best researchers, nurses and doctors, of whom we have a chronic undersupply, face having to take part in the annual scramble for an increasingly limited number of working visas, which will exacerbate the problems that the NHS has with staffing, which many of you in this chamber will be familiar with within your wards. The referendum itself sent the pound tumbling, and the white paper last Friday has at best resulted in it steadying, although it's still too soon to be sure. The depreciation of sterling over the last few years has driven up the cost of living, making stagnant wages even more painful for those on the lowest incomes, and it only promises more pain for those families as the UK economy is near stagnant and underperforming. At the crux of this motion is a request for the Mayor to take a stance that represents this city, advocating for all those things from which the city has benefited, for the freedom of movement that keeps companies such as Airbus, Rolls-Royce and BAE in the city and investing money in our local economy, for the mutual support that has brought investment into our most deprived communities, and for the open and tolerant city of which we're all so proud that the European Union has helped to foster. Given that the Labour Mayor of Liverpool and both Brighton and Hammersmith and Fulham, themselves Labour councillors, have taken a similar stance, the actions contained within this motion should not be considered extraordinary. There is support even from within the Conservative Party for a second referendum in the form of Justine Greening and her compatriots. And, as members will remember, the majority of those Bristolians who voted in the referendum voted for Remain. Surely the Council's position and that of the city's elected Mayor should reflect this. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Now I'll ask Councillor Fodor for the Green Party to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I rise to second the motion and confirm that Greens endorse this call for a people's vote on Brexit. It builds on work by Greens in Brighton and London, supported by other parties, and we're happy to add our voice here in Bristol. Our party spokesperson on Brexit MEP Molly Scott-Cato has consistently said a ratification referendum before implementing Brexit should be carried out. There are increasing doubts and divisions, so this makes it even more appropriate. Last year, global Greens and European Greens were in this country expressing their concerns at this act of self-harm called Brexit. Until we see the full details of the deal, it seems inconceivable we should proceed. Mayor Rees, I'm going to call on you. Please do draft this letter. Do write in favour of a people's vote. And here are some key points to think about. The national security concerns that can affect us here in Bristol. The local universities and their loosening of inward research funding, the damage to retention and recruitment of staff and students. This is damaging our city and the intellectual kind of progress that can be made from their contribution. Do we get a say? I think we need one. And as an officer, in the past, I worked in Bristol with colleagues from several European cities, and that collaboration, that exchange of ideas, that cross-fertilisation of the problems we have as cities was shared in common and a valuable part of being part of the European Union. And only last year, I worked with colleagues from our staff trying to secure funding to help our city with flood risk management in terms of promoting sustainable drainage solutions. That bid unravelled. We're losing access to Horizon 2020 funds as a city. We're losing European regional development funds. Will these be replaced? I think we need a say once we know the answer. It's well known that government policy uses competition, not funding by right, and so the access to regional funds is particularly important. I'd like the Mayor to do one additional thing in his letter, to contact his own party leader to say we'd like to see a ratification referendum to support the outcomes for Bristol. Bristol doesn't just need local government bodies and other councils to take part, it needs the leader of the opposition to speak up for it. Finally, at present, local and regional governments do have a direct voice into lawmaking and policy making at a European level through the Committee of the Regions. With that cancelled out on Brexit, we will no longer have a direct voice into the legislation that affects us here in local government. Yes, there's proposal for some sort of panel between central and local government, but until we know what it says, what it will do, we need to have a say. Finally, just winding up, Lord Mayor. Finally, I feel very personally, as someone of pan-European origin, someone taking away my European passport, the right to live, work or travel across Europe is personally quite distressing. Many of us also represent families who face breakup through the Brexit process. We need a say on that. So please do support this motion, do call for a ratification referendum, as the motion says. Thank you.
Thank you. We have an amendment from the Labour group, so I'm going to ask Councillor Ticknell to move the Labour amendment, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So, Brexit. Well, judging by the egregious shambles of yesterday, of those events at Westminster, the resignations, the contradictions, the confusions, the criticisms, and the government's ongoing struggle to reconcile rhetoric with reality, I have little confidence that Brexit means anything other than the slow destruction of the British economy. What I do know, when Boris said, bother business, he really did show his contempt, arrogance and ignorance. Not to mention the little attendance mistake by the Lib Dem leadership yesterday. Now, Brexit is a West of England issue and it needs a West of England solution. The Chequers proposal puts in place an alignment between EU specifications for manufactured goods and for agricultural products. Now, at least that means we won't get Donald Trump's chlorinated chickens. But what it doesn't do is deal with services, which constitute 80% of the UK economy and are vitally important to Bristol's economy. Financial services, but also the cultural and information sector, IT, universities, teaching and research, all vital to Bristol's high-tech economy. Now, under this botched plan, they're excluded from alignment with EU specifications, but that's bad enough. But even for aerospace, it's not that simple. How on earth will manufacturing and provision of services, design, maintenance, training be demarcated? You don't just make aeroplane wings. They need R&D, intelligence, service support. No wonder the commitment of Airbus to Bristol in the UK, for example, is now in question. Now, that's why we need a serious and sensible strategy. And we need to work together with the Metro Mayor and the sub-region's MPs to sort this out. Our amendments to this proposal propose just that. We've cut down some of the waffle, refocused the argument, identified some actions. For goodness sake, let's get on with saving the Bristol economy from the havoc that this government is wreaking.
And can I ask Councillor Jackson to second the amendment, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I rise to second the motion, but before I reserve my remarks, but before I sit down, I'd like to thank Shazia for all the work she's done in the past and wish her good luck in her future venture.
Right, so we move on to the other speakers now, starting with Councillor Weston.
Okay. Where to begin on this one? Let's start with this one. Liberal Democrats, you're meant to be Democrats. Surely that means you respect democracy. You don't get to pick and choose when to be democratic. It should be a constant state of affairs, I would have thought. Slight comment. Now, okay, Labour's amendment. What? At the very least, theirs asks for a vote. Yours asks, let's see, for us to consider a meeting. But don't worry, if that doesn't work, we'll write a letter. Well, fantastic. I mean, that'll show them. I'm sorry, I disagree with so much in this amendment, I don't even know where to start. Okay, damage to the economy. The estimates that I've seen say that the economy will grow between now and 2030 at 30%, if the hardest to hard Brexit is 22%. Now, pardon me for being a little sceptical when it comes to growth estimates, because these growth estimates have been put by those that said, for example, that when austerity, since we talked about that earlier, began, the economy would fall off a cliff. And then 8 years later, the IMF went, actually, we're sorry about that, we got those wrong, and actually, you were right to do that. That was in March this year, if anyone wants to have a look at that. So I take that little pinch of salt. I would never use Boris Johnson's colourful language that was attributed to him, but I take that with a pinch of salt. These are tough negotiations, I would agree with you. I think they'd be a lot easier, however, if actually politicians of all parties respected the result and seemed to stop rooting for the other side of the negotiations. This is an opportunity as well. But at the moment, it seems to be that Labour opposes anything on principle, the Lib Dems oppose anything on principle, and I'm sure you do as well. But you just got to respect the results. We councillors here were elected. We're not challenging each other as saying, oh, I didn't like that one, I think we should rerun your election. EU citizens, you might change your view on me in a minute. EU citizens, this is an urban, it's been constant all the time. EU citizens, I'm sorry, we as a government actually tried to resolve this in October 2016. Before Article 50 had been triggered, the EU were the ones that came back and said, nope, we're not going to try and sort this out early, you can take your time. We then made an incredibly generous offer and then spent a year haggling with them for them to agree the same deal with our expats. So I'm sorry, that's a myth. That's a myth. NHS workforce. Okay, this has come up. How do you keep peddling it? If anyone wants to read it, briefing paper from the House of Commons Library, number 7783, turn to page 6. All right, the data shows there were 58,698 staff recorded EU nationality in June 2016 and 61,974 in September 2017. There are various caveats that come on with it, but this measure suggests the EU has changed little since the referendum, from 5.5% of workforce to 5.6%.
Please, Councillor Weston.
I'm wrapping up right now. You are outright lying when you repeat that comment. Outright lying. You're saying you're already having the problems.
Right, we're
not going to support this. It is wrong. We respect democracy. We respect the result. And we're going to try and make the best of it. Thank you very much.
Okay, and on to Councillor Bolton for the Green Party, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor and Councillor Weston. Yes, politicians do get voted in, but we also get the chance to vote them out again. With the referendum, no such luck. And can I congratulate the Labour Party for bringing an amendment of such epically meaningless proportions? You take a motion which supports holding a ratification referendum, and as Councillor Weston has pointed out, you turn it into something which, if passed, results in writing a couple of letters and considering holding a meeting. Well, OK, but if you don't support having a second referendum, you could just vote against the motion as a whole. The case for a second referendum has been made by many people many times, not least the fact that times have changed since the original, and we start to see what leaving the EU actually means. We start to see the rather abject terms of leaving which are on offer, what it means for the environment, what it means for jobs, what it means for the economy, what it means for business, etc., etc. That's why having a vote on a solution, whatever it may be, makes such good sense. It would even get those parties, which are just as split on Brexit as the Tories, a get-out-of-decision-free card. This amendment emasculates the original. I will vote against and urge you to do the same. Thank you.
And Councillor Negus now, please. Oh, right, OK. Sorry, Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Well, I mean, yes, as Charlie said, this is just a wrecking amendment. It takes away everything that's meaningful in the original motion. And I'm afraid that's been the record of Labour in Parliament as well, hasn't it? It's been good tactics and good fun for them to watch the Tory party tearing lumps out of each other. And, you know, that as a Roman entertainment has some benefits possibly, but bluntly, it's no good for the country, and we need positive alternatives. If this wouldn't be the second referendum, by the way, it would be the third one, because people here in the UKIP party basically didn't accept the original referendum back in the 70s, where the vast majority of people said we want to be in, and they actually campaigned for 40 years against it. Was that anti-democratic? No, they were allowed to. But you see, the reason why we need a people's vote now is because the only thing they're clinging on to, and the only way that people in the Labour Party who support them, and there are people in the Labour Party who support them, can cling on to, is to say, you've got to respect the referendum. Well, bluntly, if you look at all the opinion polls, you'll actually see, although it's not been a massive shift, that if there was a referendum today, there would be a majority to remain. And that's quite clear. And that's why they won't have it. That's why they argue against it. And we can see all the damage that's appearing on the horizon now. But Parliament, as has already been said, although strangely in support of the Labour amendment, aren't sorting it out. One group of Tories fighting another group of Tories, Labour Party not knowing where they are on things. It really is not it is not sorting out the mess at all. And that is why we must have people's vote on this, because that will once and for all get rid of this idea that we've got to go back to what happened 2 or 3 years ago, when people were lied to in large ways, you know, the bus, all this money coming from Europe and going into the NHS. We all know that was a load of baloney, but they can't even now really argue that it's going to be good for the country. Instead, we must respect the people's opinion back in 2016. And I'm afraid and ashamed to say that lots of people in the Labour Party are using that argument as well. And bluntly, we need to challenge it, and we need the people to be given the power to say, we've seen what the reality is now, and we don't like it. And that is why we must now have a people's vote.
Thank you. Right, so that concludes that debate. So I will go back to Councillor Clough to respond as the mover of the original motion. Yes.
I'm afraid I will have to vote against the Labour Party's amendment. It takes the teeth out of the original proposal. It turns concrete actions into maybes and considers and a little bit of letter writing. So, there we go.
Thank you. We are running out of time, so let's make this quick. We will now vote on the amendment. Yeah. So please get ready. This is voting on the amendment. And please vote now. So the amendment is now carried. Okay. So we will now move straight to the vote on the substantive motion as amended, please. So get ready to vote again. This is on the amended motion. Please vote now. That motion as amended is now carried, and that concludes the business of today. Thank you very much to everyone here, and a special thanks to the public gallery for your